2024 세계 무형 문화유산
I'd like to welcome you all to 2024
반갑습니다. 자, 오늘
World
두
Forum
번째
for
시간을
Intangible Cultural
진행했는데요.
Heritage.
제 소개를
This
좀
is the second
해드릴까요?
day.
요즘
And
K-pop,
let me introduce myself
K-푸드,
first. These days,
K-컬처
K-pop,
유행이고
K-food,
있는데
and
저는 K
K-culture
아나운서,
are
KBS 아나운서
gaining a huge
김태은입니다.
popularity.
반갑습니다.
I am K announcer or news anchor Kim Tae-eun. And
정말
nice to meet you
귀한
all.
시간 내주셨습니다.
Thank you
자,
for taking time out of
국가유산처리
your
주관하고
busy schedule.
유네스코
This
아태
forum is hosted
무형유산센터가
by the
주관하는
Korea
이번 포럼.
Heritage
자, 양
Service
기관의
and
공식 유튜브 채널을 통해서도
organized by
여러분들 지켜보실
HCAP,
수가
and
있고요.
the forum
또
is being
오늘
live
여러분의
streamed on the
편의를
official
위해서
YouTube channel.
한국어 그리고 영어 동시 통역이
Simultaneous
진행됩니다.
interpretation is
리시버가
also
필요하신
provided
분들은
in
리시버
both Korean and
착용하셔서
English, and
이
those of you
상황을
who
같이
need
즐겨주시면
interpretation
되겠습니다.
service, please
자,
use the
어제도
receiver.
우리 석학들이 함께해 주셨고 특히 이제 앞자리에 계신 우리
Yesterday, we are joined by distinguished guests from home and abroad,
반갑습니다.
and
똑같은 모습으로 함께하고
Mr.
계시는데
Fan
어제
Jing
기조가
from
또
UNESCO
시작해
Bangkok
주셨고요.
office. You
정말
began
저는
the
우리
forum
편지
with your keynote
기자님을
speech,
통해서
and
제가
nice to
보는
meet you
역사학자 송모
again
교수님하고
today.
너무
And when
닮으셔서
I saw the
이분
face
바로
of
우리
Mr. Fan
이주의
Jing,
역사
I just
함께하고
got the
계시는
feeling that
건가
actually he looks
너무
a lot
닮으셨어요.
like
그래서
Mr. Song that I
어제도
know.
참
He is a
반가웠었는데
renowned
오늘 또
scholar here
뵙게
in
되고 그래서
Korea,
너무
and it's nice
좋습니다.
to meet
자,
you
첫 번째
today
세션
again.
이주사회 포용의 수단으로서
Yesterday,
무형유산의
the first
역할
session
주제로
was held under the theme of
지켜보셨어요.
Intangible
그리고
Cultural
두 번째
Heritage as records
세션
of human
함께
lives
하셨고
amid
첫
the
번째와 두
history of
번째 세션
migration, and the
나눠서
second session
보시면은
under the theme of the role
인류
of
이주
ICH as a
역사에
means of
기여하는
inclusive migrant
무형유산의
societies.
가치와 보존의 중요성을 공유하는
It was a
귀한
valuable
자리가
opportunity for us to
됐습니다.
share the value
이주의
of
역사 속
ICH
인류의
that
삶의
contributes to the history
기록으로서의
of human
무형유산
migration and the
첫 번째
importance of
세션 그리고 말씀드린
preservation.
것처럼 이주사회 포용의 수단으로서
So yesterday we
무형유산의
had
역할
session
두
number 1 and
번째
number 2
세션이었습니다.
under the theme of
자, 이제
ICH
오늘
as records of human
2일차
lives amid
세
the history of
번째
migration and the role of
세션은요.
ICH as a means of
현대사회
inclusive
이주
migrant
모습과
societies.
무형유산의
We
새로운
are about to
지형도라는
begin the
주제로
third
펼쳐집니다.
session
이번 세션을
of
통해서 현대사회
the
이주
second day
모습을 좀
under the theme of
살펴보시고요.
future forms of
새롭게
migration
떠오르는
and the new
무형유산의 지형도를
topographical map
알아가는
of
시간 가지시기
ICH.
바랍니다. 자, 오늘의 세션 주인공도 나와주셨는데요.
We are joined by a renowned guest from home and abroad. We are joined by Ms. Mari McLeaf, head of the Migration Research and Publications divisions at IOM headquarters in Geneva. She will give a special lecture on the title of An Elevated Agenda for Migration, and the Pact for the Future. Please welcome Ms. Mari McLeaf with a big round of applause.
Yeah, glad to have you.
Thank you so much for a very warm welcome. It is wonderful to be here, and I'd really like to pay special thank you to our hosts, UNESCO ICHCAP, the Korean Heritage Service, and also to my colleagues at the IOM Korea office based in Seoul. It is a delight to be back in Korea again. I have spent many years, in fact, living here, visiting from time to time, and it is always a delight to return. What I would like to do today is really expand our discussion to the global level and to give you some very new insights on the UN Pact for the Future, which was finalized very recently in New York UN headquarters. But first, let us just really recap and let you know a little bit about the International Organization for Migration. The International Organization for Migration started in 1951 in the post-World War II environment. It originally started as a provisional committee that was only intended to last for a few years to help displaced persons out of Europe, to travel and resettle, to form new lives in North America, in South America, Australia, New Zealand, as well as other places around the world. It has grown tremendously, and we can see here on the slide that currently we have almost universal membership, 175 member states, with also 8 observer states, up from 67 in 1998. Unusually for a United Nations organisation, IOM's activities are almost exclusively projectised. 95% of our funding is project-based, and we heard from our colleagues yesterday on the Rohingya Cultural Memory Centre, as well as the work in Azerbaijan with water technologies and knowledge, again supported and implemented by IOM on the ground. In 2024, our budget is expected to be over $3 billion globally. We are a highly decentralized organization with a very small core at headquarters based in Geneva in Switzerland. Almost all of our work and delivery is at the country or local level, and that's reflected in our global footprint. We have over 550 field locations around the world, and you can see comparatively to 1998, we have really expanded. That was 110 field locations in 1998. Now, some may say in IOM that that is due to the excellent work that we do, and I certainly will take some credit for that on behalf of the organisation. But really, we know that migration and human displacement have really expanded in terms of prominence. Member states increasingly need support in those areas, and IOM is there, of course, to assist, especially in regards to migrant assistance. Now we have over 20,000 staff. Globally, we are continuing to grow. Again, it is a reflection on the current state of the world in regards to migration and displacement. Our main areas of programming, some of you may not know, first and foremost, we provide migrant assistance and protection, including in relation to counter trafficking and countering human smuggling, but also in regards to migrant integration. And my colleague from the IOM Seoul will be speaking to this topic later today. We have a very strong area of programming in regards to labour migration. We assist countries of origin, transit and destination with their labour migration policies to support economic growth, prosperity and so forth. Migration and development, as we know, has continued to increase in prominence as a global topic, and of course international remittances provide extraordinary amounts of development assistance to back home from migrants and diaspora around the world. Immigration and border governance continues to be a key feature around the world, including to support how people are processed when they come into countries, to support human rights through border governance arrangements, and also to support sovereignty and the rule of law as it comes to immigration and border management. Emergency response has, very unfortunately, increased tremendously in terms of IOM's work and our global footprint all around the world, including, as we heard, in regards to the Rohingya response yesterday. Environmental migration is one of the core areas of IOM's work, and many people are not aware that we have been working in this space and supporting member states in particular, but with close collaboration with academics and earth scientists from around the world since the 1990s. In fact, the IOM Publications platform, the earliest electronic digital publication that is available, is from a conference in Switzerland that was held in 1992 on migration and climate change. Refugee resettlement goes straight back to the core of IOM's work, including as a provisional committee in post-war Europe. We were tasked with the logistics support, including migration health processing and support, right back as far as 1951. Migration policy and research is also a foundational area of IOM's work, and my division, the Migration Research and Publications Division, is one of the oldest in the organisation, and we were the first organisation to set up a scientific journal on migration in 1961, which has continued and is published independently by Wiley, the academic publishers, to this very day. International migration law, of course, has continued to expand, and that is providing support both to our staff and to member states all around the world in terms of rights-based approach in regards to programming. Now, to get onto the topic of today, and that was just a little intro into IOM, the Pact for the Future really has delivered, and there was some hesitancy around this, whether the Pact of the Future would be able to be agreed by member states, but I am delighted and pleased, and it's an update to the paper that is in the conference booklet, that the Pact for the Future has been passed. In terms of the international migration context, we know that international migration is relatively uncommon. However, international migrants and diaspora communities do remain on trend to positively support the delivery of the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda, arguably more than any other group of state and non-state actors. The reasons for this is that we have seen that the decades of accumulated evidence show that migration is a major driver of human development. It generates major benefits for migrants, their families, countries of origin, particularly through international remittances. And yet the role of migration in achieving the SDGs goes beyond the economic impact. It also plays a key role in promoting cultural exchange and diversity. The SDGs, of course, explicitly recognise the importance of culture as part of the International Development Agenda and highlight the importance in promoting sustainable cities, economic growth, reduced inequalities, environmental sustainability, gender equality, and peaceful and prosperous societies. As migration continues to shape the modern world, the transmission of intangible cultural heritage becomes a dynamic process, evolving as communities respond to new environments, nature, historical experiences. There are evolutions not only strengthening communities and their sense of identity and continuity, but also migration nurtures respect for cultural diversity, which is a key driver of human creativity, especially as we saw yesterday in many of the presentations. It's very essential to acknowledge the socio-cultural contributions of migrants, especially in an era of increasing disruption and widespread disinformation. These contributions not only significant to enriching migrants' destination societies, but also for countering harmful stereotypes and false narratives that jeopardise social cohesion, economic dynamism, both of which are critical to development. For instance, ICH, enriched by the diverse practices, knowledge and traditions that migrants bring with them, plays a pivotal role in this process. Very recently, I was part of an event in which Professor Toukalis, the president of the Hellenic Foundation for European and Foreign Policy, explained the future of the European Union from his perspective. And he saw that societies risk becoming museums, places that people only visit if they fail to recognise the critical role of migrants in driving forward the dynamism. By valuing and integrating the role of migrants and in the ICH that migrants contribute, societies not only strengthen their cultural richness, but also enhance their resilience and their capacity for innovation, which is critical for development. This impact of migration on cultural diversity is evident in many of our daily experiences, often without our awareness. We've become quite adept at expecting a high level of cultural diversity, but not really thinking about where that comes from. And that was something that Paul spoke about yesterday in the context of Northern Ireland. Lives are enriched by customs, by traditions, by technologies, skills and knowledge that migrants carry with them around the world. Everyday activities such as shopping, such as dining out, of course, visiting places of worship, attending performances, or enjoying sports may be influenced or enriched by these important contributions. As I mentioned, member states have agreed and finalised the Pact of the Future, but it doesn't come without a broader context. And in 2018, UN member states reaffirmed the centrality of migrants' inclusion and social cohesion in the 2018 United Nations Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. The Global Compact on Refugees likewise promotes social inclusion of refugees in the receiving country through durable solutions such as local integration. Inclusion policies for migrants can take various forms, either as part of immigration frameworks or as independent policies tailored to align with a country's specific values and broader societal approaches. The primary national policies tailored to align with a country's specific values can take three broad forms: assimilation, multiculturalism, and integration. And they very much are based on the adaptation expected from migrants, but also the level of accommodation offered. And here we can see that multiculturalism provides the highest degree of accommodation by society. Some very crisp and clear examples include Canada's multicultural policy, which was enacted in 1971 and continues to this very day. The Pact for the Future, which was adopted only a few weeks ago in New York at UN headquarters, recognises that the well-being of current and future generations and the sustainability of our planet rests on the willingness to take action. It includes many actions, but increasingly recognises the positive contributions of migrants to the Sustainable Development Agenda, and particularly to origin, destination, countries, and calls for strengthening of partnerships for safe, orderly and regular migration. The Pact also requires parties to protect and promote culture and sport as an integral component of sustainable development. The intersection of migration and ICH and social cohesion is pivotal to realising the full potential of human development globally. Migration does not simply involve the movement of people, it entails the transfer of cultural knowledge, values and practices. The Pact for the Future emphasises the importance of creating inclusive societies that harness the diverse experiences and skills of migrants, and the approach builds on the SDGs, particularly in reducing inequalities and promoting inclusive growth. And it sets the scene really for the Social Summit, which will take place in September next year under the auspices of the General Assembly and the Secretary-General's approach. We must recall that by adopting the Pact for the Future, and notwithstanding that there were some challenges to the final adoption of the Pact for the Future, Member States have reaffirmed their commitment to human dignity, cultural diversity and sustainable development. By integrating migration into the global governance agenda, the implementation of the Pact has the potential to catalyse transformative change, ensuring that the benefits of migration are widely shared and that no one is left behind. This forward-looking approach will be essential in shaping a future where migration is recognised as a vital component of the global development agenda, contributing to peace, prosperity and progress for all. Finally, if you would like to read more about international migration and displacement, I would invite you to access the World Migration Report 2024 version, which was actually launched by our Director General in Bangladesh in May this year. One last final reflection. From my perspective, we've been very privileged to be experiencing ICH throughout this conference from our gracious hosts. Extraordinary hospitality, kindness and generosity are part of the Korean ICH, and several of us have reflected on this over the course of the last 2 days. It is not only the wonderful food, the wonderful art, design, architecture and music that draws us back to Korea again and again and again. It is ultimately the Korean people that we enjoy the most. 감사합니다.
정말 모시기 힘든 특별한 게스트를 정말 모셔서
Yes, so that was a very special presentation by a very special distinguished speaker. We were able to understand the role, the background of IOM, and also on the contributions made by the migrants. And she's also mentioned about the wonderful experience from the festival. Thank you very much, Dr. Mary McAuliffe, for the presentation. Let us now move on to session 3. I would now like to invite our moderator. We have Samgi Kim or Kim Sang-wi, former Vice Chairman of ICH Committee of Korea Heritage Service. And he's currently the chair of the Crafts Subcommittee. He served as a senior curator at the National Folk Museum of Korea, head of the Intangible Cultural Heritage Division at the KHS, and head of the Planning and Coordination Division at the National Research Institute of Cultural Heritage. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. He's, as mentioned, a current member of the Traditional Craftsmanship Subcommittee of the ICH Committee at the KHS.
안녕하십니까, 김상욱입니다. 인사드리겠습니다.
It's a great pleasure to meet you all. Thank you very much.
오늘 이 자리에 함께해 주신 여러분 대단히
I would
반갑습니다.
like to once again extend my gratitude to all of our participants. The topic of session 3 is future forms of migration and the new topographical map of ICH. Let me now introduce you to our first speaker. Our first speaker will be presenting on the changes in the transmission environment of the Namita Tiger Dance after the Great East Japan earthquake. We have Yushuke Kodami, Supervising Manager from the Cultural Heritage Disaster Risk Management Center of National Institute for Cultural Heritage. He is studies cultural anthropology at the Graduate School of Saitama University, and he currently specializes in cultural property disaster risk management research on folk cultural properties. And after experiencing the earthquake of Great East Japan, he has been conducting research on relationship between local residents and cultural properties in times of disasters. A big round of applause, please, for Dr. Kodani.
발표 부탁합니다.
You have the floor. Thank you.
안녕하십니까?
안녕하세요.
本日はこうした貴重な発表の場にご招待いただきま
Good morning,
した
ladies and gentlemen.
一カップをはじめ企画された皆様に感謝を申し上げます。
예, 오늘은 이렇게 귀중한 자리를 마련해 주신 유네스코
I would like to extend my gratitude to UNESCO ICHCAP, Korea Heritage Service, and National Intangible Heritage Center for providing this wonderful event.
今日私が話をさせていただくのは、これまでの移民の話とは少し異なった東日本大震災という災害に伴う文化のちょっとした変容の話になります。
오늘 제가 말씀드릴 것은 지금까지 다른 분들이 말씀하신
What I would like to share with you is from a slightly different angle of migration. My talk will be focused on the changes that we have seen in culture ever since the Great East Japan earthquake.
波板虎舞という芸能を扱います。最初に本日通訳をしていただいているリー先生が編集された波板虎舞の動画をご覧いただきます。
예, 그 발표에 앞서서
Before I go into my presentation, I do want to give you some more information and also a video on the Namita Tiger Dance in Japan. It may be a bit difficult to understand the culture, so I think that the video will help better your understanding before the presentation, so please enjoy.
波板虎舞というのは、宮城県の気仙沼市というところに伝わる芸能です。
나미이타 호랑이 춤은
The
일본
Namita
동북부에 있는
tiger
미야기현의
dance
개센노마시에서 내려오는 전통 이름입니다.
is a performing art
東日本大震災の津波
that
で甚大な被害を受けた地域に
that was
伝わるもの
practiced in the
になり
city
ます。
of Gesenuma.
2011년 3월 11일 동일본 대지진으로 인해서
And due
津波
to
큰
the
피해를
great
입은
earthquake in
이
March of
지역에서
2011,
옛날부터 전해져
the
왔습니다.
Japanese earthquake, of course, has heavily damaged this region.
正月に行われる芸能ではしご登り、今映像にもありましたけど、はしご登りや、踊りが有名な、踊りと同時に、お囃子も有名な、芸能であります。
그 새해 첫날에 이루어지는
And
행사로
performances are held on the New Year's Day. Climbing the ladder and dancing are some of the famous performing arts that are involved. Uchibayashi, type of musical performance that involves drums, has also become an independent art form in the area and is actively practiced.
これが虎舞の様子ですね。これは東日本大震災の前ですので、後ろの方に家がたくさん並んでいる様子がご覧になります。
이게
I also want to mention that this is the Namita tiger dance, and this is the region. It's a performing arts of Kanemuta City in Miyagi Prefecture, northeastern Japan. You can see that this is before the earthquake. You still see the houses.
これが打ち囃子をしている人たちですけども、非常に多くの人たちで演奏しています。
And it's traditionally passed down in areas heavily damaged by the tsunami from the Great East Japan earthquake, and you see those that are actually performing the tiger dance.
波板虎舞というのは波板地区に住む人々によって受け継がれ、子どもたちからお年寄りまでが出演しています。
나미이타 호랑이 춤은
The Namita tiger dance is passed down by the people living in the Namita area. So it involves everyone from children to the elderly that are involved in the performance.
地域ではこの芸能を練習するための教室を開催しています。
이 지역에서는 이 행사를 위해서
This district held a folk dance class for elementary school students.
そういう教室をやっているうちにですね、子どもの送り迎えをする母親たちが参加するようになりました。
이 교실을 열면서
And with this folk dance class, of course, children were brought in with their mothers, and mothers also took part in this performance.
この母親たちの多くは結婚で波板に住むまでは虎舞とは無縁だった人たちです。
이들 엄마들은
And many of the mothers were those that have moved into the Namita area based on marriage. So they married into the family here at Namita, and they had no relationship in the past with the tiger dance.
この写真は、津波の後の写真ですけども、行われている感じはあまり変わりませんが、いろんな、人たちが参加している様子が伝わるかなと思います。
이 사진은
The pictures you see here is after the tsunami, and you can see that there isn't much of a difference in terms of those that are participating in this tiger dance.
でこの波板虎舞の行われる波板が、津波で大きな被害を受けました。
나미이타 지역은 동일본
The Namita area was severely damaged by the Great East Japanese earthquake.
多くの住民が命を落とし、虎舞関係者の多くが家を失いました。
많은 사람들이 목숨을
Many
잃었고
residents lost their lives, and many people involved in the tiger dance lost their homes.
虎舞の道具を収めていた、建物は幸いにも被害がなく、虎の頭や太鼓などというものは無事だったということです。
다행히도 호랑이
But
춤에
fortunately,
사용했던 도구를
the
보관했던
building that
건물은
housed the tools and the
붕괴되지
equipment
않았고
for the tiger dance
호랑이
suffered
머리와
little
부분은
damage,
무사했습니다.
and the tiger heads and the drums survived.
この建物が、その入れていた建物ですけども、ここまで津波は来ましたけども、建物は無事でした。
요 건물이 그
And you see this building in the picture, and this building was where the tools and the equipment were housed, and you can see that it was inundated up to the first floor.
このような状況の中ですけども、イベントに出演の話が来てまして、そして虎舞を再開することになりました。
이러한 상황에서
And
이벤트에 대한
under this
문의가
circumstance,
호랑이 춤을
the company
다시
was approached
시작하기로
about
결정했습니다.
hosting events and decided to resume the tiger dance.
この下側の写真はその津波の後に行った様子です。先ほど見てもらった写真と同じ場所から撮った写真ですけども、この奥の方の家がもう全くなくなっているのがわかると思います。
이 사진은 바로 앞에서
And the picture that
봤던
you see
쓰나미
here
전에 그
is
사진하고 똑같은
exactly the
장소에서
same
찍은
location
모습이고
of the
그
picture that was
뒤쪽에
taken
보면
before the
집이
tsunami,
없어진
and
걸
you can see that the
확인할 수
houses no
있습니다.
longer exist in the background.
これがその時の様子ですね。後ろが津波で亡くなっている様子ですけども、人々は笑顔で、芸の虎舞を楽しんでいることがわかります。
쓰나미로 인해서 많은
Due to
것들이
the
다
tsunami,
쓰러졌지만
it
사람들의
washed away so
모습들은
many things,
활기차게
but you can still
확인할 수
see that there is reinvigoration of the people there in the area.
この虎舞ですけども、東日本大震災の以前は、波板に住んでいないと虎舞ができない、そういうふうに、波板の人たちは言っていました。
그 나미타 호랑이 춤은 그
The
이전에는
Namiita tiger dance
나미타
in the
지역에 살고 있지
past
않은 사람들은 이 춤에 참가할 수
was
없었습니다.
restricted from being performed by non-residents of the region.
しかし、津波による甚大な被害によって、住民の多くが避難するなどして、波板に住んでいる人が減ってしまうようになりました。
쓰나미로 인해서 지역에 막대한
And due
피해를
to the
입고
tsunami,
주민들이
the area
떠나기
was severely
시작합니다.
damaged, and
주민수가 급격히
residents started to move out and
증가하기
migrate,
시작했습니다.
and we've seen a great decrease of the number of residents.
波板の虎舞が再開され、人気が出るようになると、多くの波板出身者が虎舞をやりたいと言い出すようになりました。
나미타 호랑이 춤을 다시
When the
시작하고
Namiita
인기를
tiger
끌며
dance was resumed and became popular
고향이었던
once
많은
again,
사람들이
we saw
자신도
many
호랑이 춤에
people
참여하고 싶다고
wanting to take part in the
말했습니다.
tiger dance.
多くの人は東日本大震災までは、虎舞をすることができない人でした。
그 많은 사람들이 그
So many people
동일본 대지진
that had roots
이전에는
in
호랑이
Namiita
춤에
wanted to
참여할
take
수
part in the
없었던
tiger dance,
사람들입니다.
and these residents were those that weren't able to take part in the tiger dance in the past.
こうした中で、彼らは決意をしたわけです。これからは、虎舞を踊れる人、虎舞を演奏できる人が波板の人であると。
이러한 상황에서 그들을 받아들이기로 했습니다.
And they decided to
그래서
take all of those
호랑이 춤을
in.
출 수
So
있거나
for
연주를 할
those
수
that
있는
can
사람이
play or dance
나미타
to the tiger
사람들이라고
dance,
결정을 내렸습니다.
they would be now defined as those of Namiita.
この写真は、気仙沼の津波の被災地で、観光客を相手にダンスをしている様子です。
이 사진은 그
And the picture that you
캔테누마
see here
지역에
is in the Ketanuma area. After the damage for the tourists, there's this performance that is being performed.
こういう、踊りというのが、よく、東日本大震災だと行われていました。
이런 행사들이 지진
And
이후에
these events after the tsunami took place in various parts across Japan.
この写真はですね、2020年東日本大震災から9年経って撮ったものです。また同じ場所で撮りましたけども、先ほどまで低いところにあったところが盛り土をなさって、盛り土がされて、そしてここにも家がその後立ち並ぶようになります。
이거는 이제 일본 대지진이
The picture that you see here is 9 years after the earthquake in 2020. You can see that there are many people taking part in this practice. And if you see the area that was damaged, you can see that they're doing the groundwork to build the buildings once again.
奥側の家がたくさんあったところには工場が出来上がっています。
원래 저 안쪽에 있었던 그 많은 집들이
Originally,
있던
there were
곳은
many
현재는
houses in the back,
공장으로
but right now we
들어섰습니다.
have factories that do reside in this area.
そうした中ですけど、この中にも何人か、外の地域から戻ってきて虎舞をやっている人たちが映っています。
이 안에도 원래 참가 불가능했던
And
외부에서
you can see that there are groups of people, but we had those coming from the outside living in Namiita right now who is now taking part in this performance.
東日本の、復興が終わった後、東日本大震災から10年、ようやく復興事業も終了し、波板地区は新しい生活を取り戻しました。
대지진 이후 10년이 지난
So 10 years
시점에
have passed
개원
since the
프로젝트가
Great East Japan
완료가 됐고
earthquake, where we've been
나미타
seeing
지역은
reconstruction
새로운
projects
삶을
being
다시
completed,
되찾았습니다.
and Namita area regained a new way of life.
その中でも、並板トラマイは続いています。
이러한 상황에도 불구하고
And
나미타
despite
호랑이춤은 계속
these
공연되고
difficult
있습니다.
circumstances, the Namita Torami or tiger dance continues to be performed.
この写真は、2020年に、お正月にトラマイをやった後の、宴会の様子です。
이 사진은 2020년
The picture you see here is in 2020 during the New Year's party. So you can see that it's a celebratory gathering.
昔のようにこう虎頭をですね中心に神様のように崇めて、皆さんでお酒を飲みます。
옛날 그대로 방식으로 해서
So it's in the very traditional form where the tiger head mask is at the center and people would surround the tiger head offering their celebrations.
そしてこの場所は、津波の後新しく作った集会所です。
이 장소는 대지진 이후에 새롭게
this venue
호랑이춤 연습을 위해서
is a new venue that was built after the tsunami to practice the tiger dance.
この場所は中で津波の練習、はしごに登った練習ができるように設計されています。
이 장소는 아까 우리가 동영상에서
And this venue, as we've seen in the video, is an area where you can practice climbing very tall ladders. So it's a very tall, high-rise building.
そこでも、子どもたち、そして大人たちでお母さんたち、いろんな人が参加して新年会が行われています。
신년에는 어린이뿐만 아니라
And during the New Year's party, we have not only children, adults, senior citizens, and men and women taking part.
並板トラマイというのが、東日本の大震災の後どういう動きをしたのかということを最後に述べたいと思います。
그 대지진 이후에 나미타
Ever
호랑이춤이
since
어떻게
the
변했는지
earthquake,
말씀을 드리고 싶습니다.
what kind of changes or transformations that we see in the tiger dance?
東日本大震災の後、先ほど紹介した方針転換は並板トラマイにとって伝承を継続する上で大きな力となりました。
대지진 이후에
After the Great East Japan earthquake, there was a change in policy. So in other words, it was about enabling non-residents or those that do not reside in Namita to take part in the tiger dance. So this was a major change, and we believe that this has been a great driver in enabling us to continue on with this tradition.
一方で震災直後の状況の中では、津波被災地である並板地区がどのような復興がなされるのかというのは全然まだわからない状況にありました。
지진 직후에는
And right after the tsunami and the earthquake, we had no idea as to how the Namita area would be recovered.
そうした中で並板トラマイに加われる人が並板の住民であるというこの新しい考え方は、物理的に並板という地区がどのようになっていっても並板トラマイが続く限り並板地区とその住民が、仮想的な形で残っていくというものになります。
호랑이 춤에 참여하는 사람들이
So for those that do participate in the tiger dance, the definition now would be that they would be the Namita people. So this means that no matter what happens to the physical area of Namita, as long as we have the Namita tiger dance, we would have the people of Namita living, remaining, and would really transbound any time or space limitations.
いわば並板トラマイ自身が、並板というコミュニティになったとも言えるような状況にあります。
다시 말씀드리면 나미타
In other
춤
words,
자체가
the Namita tiger
커뮤니티가
dance in
된
itself
것이라고
becomes and now
말씀드리겠습니다.
became a community.
これが、並板トラマイの東日本大震災から10年の姿ということになります。
지금까지 말씀드렸던 게 나미타의
And I've just mentioned the
말씀드렸습니다.
changes and the transformations that we've seen in Namita for the past 10 years.
最後におまけです。並板ダンス、並板トラマイの、メキシコの話になります。
마지막으로 이제
So that was the 10 years after the earthquake, the transformation that we've seen in the Namita dance. And let me also give you some more thought and information on what happened afterwards.
100年前に並板の人はメキシコに移住しました。
100년 전에
100 years ago,
사람들은
residents of
멕시코로
Namita
이민했습니다.
migrated to Mexico.
そしてこの間、 最近情報を得ました。ナミータの移住した人たちはメキシコで虎舞をやってるそうです。
최근에 제가 들은
And
정보에
according
의하면
to
멕시코에 사시는
recent information,
일본인들
I've heard
중에
that those
나미타
that live in
수요일
Mexico, Japanese that live in Mexico,
수고했다는 그런
are
정보를
actually
들었습니다.
practicing the Namita tiger dance in Mexico.
このメキシコの虎舞はどんなダンスなのか、私もまだ見たことありません。
멕시코에서 출고 있는 나미타
So
또는
the
춤이
Namita
어떤
tiger dance in
춤인지 저도
Mexico, I
본 적은
do
없습니다.
wonder. Well, I've never seen how it is actually practiced or performed in Mexico.
ただ今のナミータの新しいルールの下では虎舞を続けているということはメキシコの彼らもまたいまだにナミータの住民であるのかもしれません。
동일본 대지진 이후에
Ever since the Great Japan earthquake, the Namita tiger dance regulations or policy changed. So I think that we can say that the descendants in Mexico are indeed residents of Namita as long as they practice the tiger dance.
どなたかメキシコの虎舞ご存知な方いませんでしょうか。
혹시 여러분 중에 멕시코에
Does anyone
이루어지고
know
있는
about the
나미타
Namita
호랑이
tiger
춤
dance
알고
in
계신 분
Mexico?
계신지요?
감사합니다.
Thank you.
감사합니다.
네, 저는 2011년 동일본 대지진이
In 2011, the
뉴스를
Great
접한
Japan
자연재해 중에서
earthquake.
가장 큰 자연재해
That news,
지금까지
well,
기억하고
for me,
있습니다.
I recall as one of the most
그곳에서
catastrophic
전
natural
세계적으로
disasters
나미타
that was covered in the
호랑이
news. And the
사회적
Namita
토지를
tiger
빼앗아
dance that
가는데도
was
불구하고
performed there in that
다시
area,
기업으로
although they've lost their
되살아나고
grounds, their
나무가
homes, you
살아나고
can see that it has
일본
transformed
아이들과
itself
다시
based on the
재건되고
memory
그 무형물
and
유산이
the cherished
하나의
thoughts of the
구심점
residents. And you can
역할을
see
하는 그런
that this
상황입니다.
ICH has
아주
been
대단히
a
감사합니다.
pillar in the restoration of this region. So thank you very much for that presentation.
두 번째 발표를 진행하겠습니다.
Now let me invite our
두
second
번째
speaker.
발표 주제는 인도네시아 수도
The
이전
title of the
계획안
second presentation is Indonesia's capital relocation plan and efforts to safeguard ICH. And Mr. Harry Yogaswara will deliver the presentation. He is a senior researcher and head of the research organization for archaeology, language and literature, National Research and Innovation Agency, or the BRIN of Indonesia.
고고학 언어 문학 연구소장
He is an anthropologist by training with more than 3 decades of research on indigenous people, migration, and local knowledge related to the interaction between humans and environments, or human ecology.
해오신 분입니다. 발표자 선생님을 모시겠습니다.
Please welcome Mr. Harry Yogaswara with a big round of applause.
Thank you for moderator. Good morning for everyone. First of all, I would like to say thank you for the Korean Heritage Service and UNESCO HCAP to inviting me to the very important meeting related with intangible heritage culture. In this occasion, actually, I would like to present about the Indonesian capital relocation plan and effort to the safeguard of intangible cultural heritage. My name is Heri Yogaswara. Right now, I am head of research organization for archaeology, language and literature in National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia. Actually, I was working in the Research Center for Population for 26 years and mostly working about the migration. But 3 years ago, I have the new job working in the something with related with culture heritage. I am managing in my office 3 research centers related with archaeology, 3 research centers related with the language and literature, including intangible culture, and also about the heritage of religion. That's why actually in Indonesia, that which we talk about heritage is difficult to separate intangible and the tangible because both of them is in my office. And then I think I would like to talk a little bit about the one of the hot issues in Indonesia about the relocation of our capital. But actually, relocation is not really start yet. because just the palace is already there, president is already there, but I think with the relocation is still ongoing. Okay, I would like to start my presentation with this voice from below. Actually, this is my conversation with a lady in 2021, but it is really affected me to see about the relocation plan. She said to me, if I can refuse, I would like to refuse. Capital does not exist yet, but we have had a negative impact already. I couldn't imagine if the new capital would exist. This was a piece of conversation with Dahlia. Dahlia actually the name of flower. A young woman from Batik ethnic group, an Adat community inhabitant of Nusantara capital city or IKN. We call Adat community in Bahasa Indonesia because in English we still not use the indigenous people term, yeah, because of our political standing about the term indigenous people. And then the conversation was in June 2021, while infrastructure development had not started yet, because she felt bad that her family and relative lost their land due to the outsider demand, while the government announced choosing IKN in her homeland. But I really interested with the word from her. I couldn't fight. I will resist with my own culture. I would like to have alternative education and train our children in dance and tradition for our everyday life. For her, he would like to resist with his own culture. That's very important, I think, this message. Okay, now I would like to give a little bit broader context about the migration in Indonesia, but of course very short because this is about the intangible culture, not about the migration. Indonesia has more than 17,000 islands. Now, 34 provinces, 416 districts, and 98 cities with more than 278 million in population. But the population actually imbalanced with focus in Java and Sumatra. You can see from the statistic, in Java Island, more than 56%, Sumatra 21%, but Kalimantan is only 1%. Can you imagine we call that the imbalance population? And then if we talk about the migration, yeah, actually we have the several kind of migration. First, we call the demographic engineering. Why we call demographic engineering? Because the migration is sponsored by the government program. Yeah, we had transmigration. Yeah, transmigration actually start from the colonial period from 1905 to transfer people from Java to other islands, especially to Sumatra and Kalimantan. And also we have spontaneous migration. Spontaneous migration, that's like people would like to move because for something, the economic reason, to have better life to other island. And also we have the kind of, we call the forced migration. The forced migration is because of disaster. We had the experience with the Mount Agung eruption in Bali, and then the people should move to another island, and so many disasters. We have also the conflict, yeah, conflict, because actually my dissertation about the ethnic conflict between the migrant and the locals in the central Kalimantan. And thousands of the migrants should come back to their homeland. And also we have the, based on the climate, especially related with the sea level rise and also forest fire. Yeah. And if we talk about the inter-island migration, actually there is a created acculturation, yeah, not assimilation. That's, I think, the importance of this kind of migration. However, as I mentioned earlier, there are some also conflict based on the religion and ethnic problem. But in my point of view, the problem not about the culture and religion. The problem is the local politics. Local politicians would like to have position in using culture and ethnic matters. Okay, now we talk about the new capital. New capital is new form of migration simply because the president just announced in 2016 and the law just occurred in the 2022. Can you imagine? We need 3 years to have law, and then now 2004, only 2 years, and we need to really very fast to build the area. And then, of course, in my point of view, the new capital city will create new form of migration with different stage. Start from the construction, because so many labor from other island to come, and also civil servant will bring their family, and also the business sector will bring the domestic worker and also people for foreigners. The question is, why was East Kalimantan chosen? Yeah, I think there are some reason. Because of the geographical strategic, you can see Kalimantan is in the middle of Indonesia. Sufficient state-owned land, because new capital city need land. Secure from disaster, and also accessibility from 2 big cities, because there are Samarinda and as a capital city of East Kalimantan, and Balikpapan is the industrial and we call also port city, and sufficient water resources, and also accessibility from land, sea, and air, because East Kalimantan is quite accessible from other part of Indonesia, and also low level of social conflict due to openness of local people to migrate. Because the experience of migration, yes, since the colonial time, the East Kalimantan people is more accepted to others, people from other island. And also minimal negative impact to the local community. And we call the new capital, it was named Nusantara, yeah, Nusa Antara, around island, archipelago. Or Ibu Kota Negara, we call IKN. That's why I use IKN or IKN, because that word is now very familiar in Indonesia. And the IKN cover a land approximately 256,000 hectares. Can you imagine how big that the capital city, and then the water territorial was roughly around 68,000 hectares. There are 2 districts in the new capital city, namely Penajam Pasir Utara and Kutai Kartanegara, but the center of government will be in Sepaku sub-district of Penajam Pasir Utara. How about the migration? Actually, 3 years ago, there was the 2 scenarios. Around the 182,000 civil servants will move, or 180,000. But I think now it's still debating. Because why? Because the concept is the small city. A small city no need to have many people. But I think we predict maybe 1.5 million people will move to the capital city. But based on our experience in other regions, actually it is hardly to predict about the migration. Yeah? Because as yesterday I heard also from other speakers, migrants will bring their culture, tradition, and also habit. And also, they will also learn how to prevent conflict and create a hybrid culture. Yeah, I think that's, we do hope the hybrid culture will be arise, not the conflict among ethnics. And also, spontaneous migration will increase rapidly in the area where economic activities grow. In Indonesia, we have proverb, where there is a sugar, there are bone to ants, ya. If gimana ada gula di situ ada semut, which means where there is an opportunity, it will attract the people. In English, it is known where there is smoke, there is a fire. That's I think the problem of spontaneous migration. We cannot predict. Yeah, that's I think in other area that's really problem. I think I will pass. And also, the important is the ethnic composition in East Kalimantan actually is already combined, yeah, between the local and the migrant. But I think in East Kalimantan, this migrant is the the bigger than the local. But the important is, even though from other country, they already born in the island, meaning to say lifetime migration already, yeah. And then I think, okay, now we talk about intangible culture heritage. This is existing condition. Fortunately, we have law that's we call the Cultural Advancement Law. In that law, actually mentioned about the 10 cultural objects. That's actually intangible culture heritage. The existing condition like this, yeah. We have the oral tradition, manuscript, custom, rites, traditional knowledge, indigenous technical knowledge, arts, local languages, traditional game, and traditional sport. Yeah, I think this is a very important to mention about this statistic, because this is a very good for us as a base, as a basic to understand for if the 10 years from now, what the figure of the intangible culture heritage. And actually, in this presentation, I would like to mention about the 3 efforts, how the safeguarding of the intangible culture heritage. First, about the national guideline. We have law number 5/2007 on cultural advancement and its regulation. Second is the authority IKN initiative, because right now we have the authority of IKN. Yes, the authority have some power. And we will talk later on about the grand design, culture advancement, about the living museum and preserving local wisdom, and also some research on intangible culture heritage. Okay, first, this is if we talk of the safeguarding, we need national law as guideline. And then actually that national law is really talk about the heritage, intangible and also tangible heritage. Meaning to say we already have the good guideline to do something related with safeguard. And secondly, the initiative from authority, we have already grand design cultural advancement for IKN. And then I think this is quite comprehensive grand design. And I think there are some important recommendations actually. First, we need to inventory and identification of cultural objects in IKN and store it in cultural database. We need to database to have good planning development. And also development of public space related to cultural objects. Development of regular and sustainable art festival. Capacity building for community related to culture and welfare activities, because we cannot also focusing on culture without touch the welfare thing. Capacity building for local education facilities. And also the program actually use the 2 terms. First, short term in the 2000 and 2004, and middle term 2025 up to 2029. And also the principle of protecting, development, utility, and also coaching of the intangible culture heritage. That I think I problem this, I cannot read. Okay, and one of initiative from the authority is about the promoting living museum. Yeah, the importance of the living museum is actually they would like to have space, and then the space, if the living space, not artificial space, yeah, not museum and etc., but really the village where people can live. And the idea actually come from the one village in Karangasem district of Bali. Many of us may be familiar with Bali. The Bali is very good to maintaining their culture. This is the concept of living museum. First is preservation and protection of culture, center of education, cultural innovation, economic empowerment, social interaction and people activism, nature preservation, and authenticity in cultural tourism. That I think the concept of the living museum. And also using we call, I think very familiar with pentahelic model, how to connect and integrate from the government, business, community, media, and academic. And then another initiative was preserving local wisdom, because there is a circular letter from the authority how to preserve the local wisdom in IKN area. I hope that can work properly later on. And also, I think that there is some kind of research in our office. Only intangible cultural heritage, we already have like 15 research. And I would like to do more research, because I think some sector is still not touched up to now. And also the important thing is the local initiative from the people. I note there are two initiatives. First, the community initiative to produce dictionary of Balik language. Balik is the local ethnic group, and the young generation would like to make a dictionary to preserve their culture. And just like I mentioned about the Dahlia, would like to creating sekolah adat or customary school that teaching custom, tradition, dance, and local history of the community. And also, I think this coming year, we would like to focus research on, we call the benchmarking hybrid culture, which would like to see how the local ethnic group met with the ethnic group from migrant, and we would like to learn how the product from the meeting the two different culture. That's why I think we call that benchmarking Nusantara heritage. And also about the research focus, I think the most important now is try to documentation of endangered intangible culture heritage and digitalization, and also how to make policy research that provide answer that policy should be done to safeguarding IHG8 of IKN. Yeah, I think I would like to close this presentation about the one poem from one of my researchers. Words from Nusantara capital city. In this verdant realm of ancient lore, indigenous voice rise and soar. Their land of hope, a forest deep, where life and livelihood they reap. With heirlooms sacred they clear the way. Sadok, Bijok, Mando, Potan, all the local tools for agriculture, they say. The Belian ritual, like a saman, a sacred dance, Soyong mantras in mystic trance. To cosmic force they appeal for guidance to their forest real. But as progress thunder near, will their wildlife or preserve, or will their culture fade from sight behind a eucalyptus day and night? In this land and hope, they stand guardian of a vanishing land. Thank you very much.
예, 발표 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
수도 이전 발표를 듣고
The presentation was on the Indonesia's capital relocation. So there are indigenous people or the ethnic group living in the area where the new capital city will be relocated. So Mr. Yogaswara mentioned the community-led ICH safeguarding efforts. And however, it seems that there's uncertainty whether the ICH of the local area or IKN can be safeguarded in an appropriate way. It seems that the Indonesian government is making preparations and making efforts to preserve the ICH in the IKN. Now let me introduce the third speaker.
The next speaker will be talking about how sea level rise in the Pacific is affecting community life. We have Adi Meretui Ratwana, President of Blue Shield Pacifica. President Adi Meretui Ratwana is currently as mentioned, the president of Blue Shield Pacifica, based in Fiji, focusing on disaster risk reduction for galleries, libraries, archives, museums in the Pacific. You have the floor.
Iya, mucho dolovata. I'm greeting you in my language from Nandi. My name is Meretui Ratunambombo, and I'm from Fiji, but I'm here representing Blue Shield Pacifica. Sorry, just get the technology right. So, firstly, let me thank you for inviting me, the organizers, and for giving me the opportunity to present at this auspicious occasion of the 2024 World Forum on Intangible Cultural Heritage. Warm congratulations to the organizers in facilitating the meeting of great minds to mingle again and with former colleagues and champions working to promote ICH internationally at this year's World Forum. Get the technology. First of all, Blue Shield Pacifica is a regional NGO, and it is working towards protecting the world's cultural heritage from human-induced disasters and natural disasters for the Pacific region. So Blue Shield Pacifica is registered under the Blue Shield International since 2016 and is hosted by the Fiji Museum in Suva, Fiji. We promote the Hague Convention and raising awareness of the Sendai framework in the Pacific. That's an old image. Today, I wish to share some insights from the Pacific region, a region spread out across a third of the world, an expanse of ocean with small island developing states, while many of us prefer to be known as from large ocean states. Our vast Pacific region has immense cultural and natural diversity with over 1,000 indigenous languages spoken, notably with Papua New Guinea having the highest, 851 languages, with 832 living languages, while other parts of the Pacific speak languages that are considered at risk or endangered due to the lack of number of practicing speakers, the lack of transmission of knowledge, and which is due to the impacts of globalization and the loss of value. There are differences in cultural traditions and faith beliefs across the Pacific, and this vast area known as Oceania that has been impacted by development since the early colonizers or Vilangi visitors arrived on our shores. We vary in governance, systems and sizes, and much more has been written and searched on climate change. I would like to highlight today a few examples as a result of climate change faced in the Pacific with regards to diaspora and migration issues. To start with, my own case. Going forward. Nope. Sorry. Excuse the technology. So to start with my own case, I was born in Fiji, but grew up in a Fijian diaspora community living in British Army postings with my family in the UK, Hong Kong, Germany, So for 22 years was living away from my ancestral home, far away from my kinship ties. But I returned to reconnect, learn with a strong sense of belonging and being a part of a huge extended family that I never knew before, with the unique cultural traditions and identity. I do, however, struggle to speak and comprehend my native language fully. I could therefore relate to the sensitivities of diaspora communities, for example, from Tuvalu, living in New Zealand, and I was able to assist create strategies to pass on their traditional knowledge to their migrant communities. I'll briefly share as a way to ensure transmission of intangible cultural heritage later in my presentation. Today I will briefly highlight a few island states, setting the scene of those facing the challenge of climate change and migration as climate refugees versus those choosing voluntary immobility from the Federated States of Micronesia and Yap, Fiji, Vanuatu and Tuvalu. In the ancient past, some of our people I'll just go back. At the onset, it would be noted that the dilemma faced by some of our people who have lived in an environment for generations and are now being forced to move away due to the threats of climate change, out of their context and comfort zones, be it at an atoll, island atoll, highlands, or sea coastal area, where people have observed the signs in nature, recognizing the changes in the environment when storms or cyclones are about to approach, and how to adapt if forced. The social consequences that follow can affect their sense of belonging or knowing. In the ancient past, some of our people were navigators, rich in ICH, who traveled miles across the oceans, using traditional magnificent sailing vessels, and were able to read the stars, observe the weather patterns, the wave patterns, and on land observe traditional seasonal calendars for planting and harvesting, and recognize the signs out at sea. They observed traditional early warning systems for impending storms. There is evidence of migration between the vast ocean, notably in the languages and customs, for example, for the navigators from the Polynesian Triangle, between Aotearoa, New Zealand, where they say kia ora, the Cook Islands in Rarotonga, where they greet with a kia orana, and in Tahiti, where they say iorana. So they're oceans apart, but closely related, even though there's this vast expanse that they covered in the past. In terms of climate change, there's been much research compiled by archaeologists in the Pacific region, including Dr. Paddy Nand and the Sunshine Coast, and in reference to a snapshot here of an area in Micronesia. So as you can see there, we've got the findings that report that sea level rise in the Pacific has been rising since AD 18,000, with the Little Ice Age, when the Little Ice Age ended. Towards the end of the 20th century, the rate of global sea level rise accelerated, and in Micronesia, an area that we'll just look at, reached its fastest rate for some 7,000 to 8,000 years. Some 8 millimeters per year, that's in 1993. This is far faster than the rate of sea level rise during the 500-year-long medieval warm period, which averaged less than 2 millimeters in the Northwest Pacific. So indigenous responses, both tangible and intangible, are unlikely to prove adequate to cope with the present and future coastal change driven by sea level rise. So this is the findings from the archaeologists. Dr. Padinan and his study has shown that among the people living on the islands in Micronesia, there is a formidable body of relevant traditional knowledge about adaptation to coastal change, as well as deep-seated cultural determination to challenge its undesired effects. The study showed that adaptation, while likely unavoidable, can be effective if informed by the best available science and could be sustained by ensuring local communities are assured that their cultures and livelihoods will be only minimally affected. Oops. There's our region from the Micronesia. So the stonework tradition, sorry, that map is just the North Pacific, so I've just read what the findings were for sea level rise. So the stonework tradition in Micronesia and its intangible component complement the long-standing interaction between island peoples and the changing coastline. The idea that there are both defensive and offensive forms of coastal stonework, the former conceived when sea level was rising, the latter celebrating subsequent sea level fall. It explains the current ambiguous response to coastal change in the islands like Yap, where the forms are mixed. In this understanding perhaps lies the key to unlock the power of culture for future adaptation. By recognizing that the contemporary situation is one that now, once again, requires more defensive than offensive stonework and may help convince coastal dwellers on high Micronesian islands like Yap to subscribe to long-term adaptation strategies. The insight has implications for all those within the Federated States of Micronesia and beyond who are developing plans to sustain their coastal livelihoods. Therein, for it is clear that such plans will neither be effective nor sustainable unless they incorporate key cultural attributes, such as the stonework tradition that is engraved so deeply in Micronesian culture. It may be that Micronesia is one of the few places where there is a long and sustained history of resisting coastal change, but it also may be that similar traditions elsewhere are neither so clearly recognizable nor so prominent in contemporary in-country discussions about future adaptation. It behoves all seeking to help communities adapt to future global change to harness their traditional knowledge on the subject and incorporate its elements into adaptation strategies. But the lessons from this is wider still. For while the belief in the vulnerability of small islands is most universal, it ignores the ways in which island societies succeed in remaining viable for the millennia. In the case of Micronesia, undervalues the cultural resilience manifested by the stonework tradition and its intangible complement. The same is true of other modern Pacific societies, from the demonstration of sustainable traditional food security in Vanuatu and their well-being indicators, to the insight that constructing Tuvaluan identity in terms of vulnerability can also operate to silence identities that emphasize more empowering qualities of resilience and resourcefulness. It makes no sense to attempt to override indigenous resilience to adapt to global change in such situations. And you see an example there from Yap, which is in Nambandol, which is World Heritage Site listed for your information. But that shows you the resilience and that people need to take pride in their own heritage and culture, the tangible and the intangible, and that's one of the results. So moving the focus to Fiji, for an example, of voluntary immobility. Fiji is a nation where more than 800 communities have been recognized by the government as being at risk from sea level rise and associated impacts, and in need of the state and or donor-supported adaptation relocation. However, despite significant coastal erosion and flooding over the last 2 decades, Serua Island residents in Fiji, for example, have chosen to remain and regard their island as a source of pride and as critical to their identity in incorporating local understandings of climate-related voluntary immobility in climate adoption policy formation. and it is critically important. Just to highlight this, I have a poem. So I'll just read out this poem that is from a local young artist. Is a visual artist, and he also is a navigator. He's learned the skills of traditional navigation. So there is a dichotomy there where you either stay in the place or relocate. So voluntary immobility is one of those that people are choosing. And so this is just to highlight an identity in crisis. My Fiji, a land of wonder, I hold dear, where I truly belong, bound by ancestral ties woven through the ages. Here, dreams transform into visions. Imagination finds its form in a space once obscured by the crashing of waves. However, graced by sunlight, with birds singing in the breeze, stands a solitary isle I call my home, Fiji. Life here feels like a dream, capturing imagination in every facet of existence, the thread of manna intertwined in the quiet pulse of time. Echoes of voices harmonize while the steady beat of the lali, that's a drum, chants of the elders unveil. The story of my identity, the culture of my sacred lineage, etched deep within my soul, binding me to this land. Through and through my veins flow with the bloodline of my ancestors past, illustrating a history of my people's resilience, seafarers in search of a piece of paradise, the patterns of battles woven into Massi, the legends of myths of my heritage inscribed in my very bones, marking my existence. With the rise and fall of tides, the shifting of the moons, a new era begins, a time for the next generation. My moment has arrived. Though my father's days have passed, their memories linger closely. Their tales are now woven in verse, in chants that leap with life, as rhythms, meke is a dance, in celebration. This land is paradise, a place where unity thrives. The voices of my people blend into one heartbeat, a single voice of freedom for the world to hear. In the midst of life's chaos, there exists a sanctuary that I proudly call my home, Fiji. So that's just to illustrate that some communities, whether there's climate change going on, sea level rise, they will stay. And this has also been resonated in Yap and Tuvalu and other places. So I'll just move on to the next. So again, we look at Tuvalu, which is an atoll island in the Pacific. This image is of a diaspora community in New Zealand. And they're particularly threatened by long-term habitability of the island country. It has a land area of only 26 square meters, 26 square kilometers, that's 10 square miles, and an average elevation of less than 2 meters, that's 6.6 feet above sea level, with the highest point of New Lakita being about 4.6 or 15 feet above sea level. Potential threats to the country due to climate change include the king tides and storm surges, and the sea level rise, the rising sea level to inundate the low-lying atolls. Tuvalu is considered one of the first countries likely and significantly impacted by rising sea levels due to global climate change. According to the estimates, the highest tides could regularly flood 50% of the land of the national capital, Funafuti, by the mid-21st century, and 95% by 21,000. The rising saltwater table could also destroy deep-rooted fruit crops such as coconut, taro, etc., before they're overtaken by actual flooding. So food security is a huge problem, and they're having to import a lot of food. Climate change remains the single greatest environmental threat to the livelihood and well-being of the people of the Pacific, and that sea level rise and climatic change threatens the existence of atoll nations. The climate crisis has impacted the food, water, housing, security, as well as forced migration. About a fifth of Tuvalu's population of 12,000 have already relocated to New Zealand under the Pacific Access category, a ballot that allows up to 150 citizens to be granted residence in New Zealand every year. Many struggle to earn a living and are concerned about losing their cultural identity. Australia and New Zealand and Fiji have offered to host the citizens, but the Tuvaluans are still looking for other options. There's also been suggestion of a digital copy of Tuvalu, as reported in the Guardian newspaper, which we put the link there. And it's been reported that they wish to have a digital clone of the island, so recording everything. But that's if you have the high technology and the power's on, and those simple things that we have to deal with in the Pacific. In the meantime, there's a low technology option, such as a cultural site mapping tool developed by Ecomos Pacifica that can be used to document the sites of the islands, requiring less high technology and involving communities, but requires basic training. While what is another possible solution for communities who have relocated as migrants to other places and struggle to maintain their intangible cultural heritage is to look at smart strategies to support the diaspora communities that need to be formulated, financed and implemented. An example here, I'll just show you. I'm not sure whether you can see that, but there's an example that I've put in the paper that was developed by the people from Tuvalu in the diaspora community, where they had about 500 members living in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I was asked to help formulating a goal for culture to instill pride and preserve the Vai Tupu, authentic cultural heritage, through intergenerational transmission of language, traditional arts, targeting 4 groups, mainly preschool, Tamaliki, and for the youth, Limalosi for the women, or Fafifine, and importantly, recognition of the elders, Ulusina. The model is shared here and can be adapted to other diaspora communities to suit their situation in their own language. The sample was financially supported by the Vai Tupu Community Trust Fund in Aotearoa, New Zealand, acknowledging the diaspora communities affected by climate change to adapt to their new environments, but stay well connected and well versed with their own intangible cultural heritage from their island homes. I'm sure the Vai Tupu community would be very happy to share more of the results after the monitoring and evaluation of the strategy and its effects after a 2-year period. So there you see some of the key outcome areas. All the concerns are raised and the headings that they'll come under, and what the communal outcomes will be, and the results. So this has been discussed with the people from Tuvalu. They are one of the smallest communities or atoll communities, and they're in urgent need of safeguarding their ICH. If they hadn't done it already in Tuvalu, when they're going over to New Zealand now, it's not just a matter of digitizing, it's a matter of the transmission from the elders to the youth, from the elders to the children. With Tuvalu, they were also have to look at their language, where with Bible, the Bible that was introduced through the churches, they were speaking Samoan, so they have to go back and relook at their Tuvaluan language. And there you can see there could be online teaching and Zoom training while they're out there, but the people who are going over from Tuvalu to the mainland, it's a different environment, it's cold, there's no sunshine, there's no fish to go and pick from the sea, you have to buy tin fish, so all of those are things that they have to adjust. And there was an Ecomos Australia meeting in 2023, and there's lots of results from the diaspora communities there. And we also have the festivals of Pacific arts and culture that just happened last year. Another poem. Have I still got time for a quick poem? I seem to be okay. Right, the other poem, again, for recognition and climate change. So look around you. Can you not feel the patterns of nature, the swelling of the sea, the winds and the tides? Their melodies have shifted, their rhythms lost to the destructive force engulfing our shores, our beloved Pacifica, our treasured homes. Look around you. Can you not see the migratory lands, the fish that once thrived, now mere echoes of what was? Once a time of plenty, now memories fading, a tragedy of our youthful days, cherished moments as we watched helplessly. Little by little, our livelihood vanished in a blink. Look around you. Can you not hear nature's cries, weeping for survival, burdened by the weight of human greed, pushing all creatures to the brink of extinction, the last frontier eroded from within, while blind eyes turn, building empires of silver and gold, the treasures of old played like dice, fate left to chance to decide. Look around you. Do you not care for the plight of the vulnerable in this ocean of destruction, pollution of our waters, our land and our air, suffocating lives, dying in masses, wailing for recognition, for survival, their dignity stripped to the core, cultures and traditions washed away by tides of unrelenting force, while innocents watch, helpless and praying for a distant breath of mercy, for recognition of change. Look around you. Please, just a moment, open your eyes and ears. If not, your heart. Look and listen. The world is crying for a little change, for survival, for respect, for the small, the minority, the people of the ocean, my people, to be counted as equally important as the rest of them. For we are from here, and there is nowhere else but here. And this, again, is a young poet, so we should be encouraging young people with their poetry and their thoughts, who's also a navigator. So, kamsahamnida. Thank you very much for listening. And the sample I gave you there of the Tuvalu diaspora training manual, if you like, or priority for culture, we would really love it if somebody would help us to monitor and evaluate the success of the implementation of the strategy and how it has affected the people living in in New Zealand from Tuvalu, as they are a minority group and in danger of disappearing. Minaka. Thank you.
발표 감사합니다.
Yes, thank you very much for that presentation. I was listening to this presentation and I thought sea level rise and the people of the oceans, the current status, and in terms of the adaptation, many options, many interesting things happening. And also, if you think about the people, so you can see that they have their traditional knowledge on the seas, on the oceans, and on the skies. And this traditional knowledge, if they do not reside in that place, what kind of value would this carry? So if we can find a way to have them sustain their lives there, the traditional knowledge would, of course, carry on more significance. So that was quite interesting. And let us now move on to the next presentation. Well, before that, she's also mentioned about some of the alternatives and the strategies in terms of how we can move on and live on. And I do believe that this strategy would be implemented going forward. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Now, let me proceed with the fourth presentation of the session number 3. And the fourth presentation will be delivered on the title of Impact of Climate Change and the Natural Disasters on ICH, the Natural Phenomenon. Let me invite Ms. Sarah Aslan, head of the Registration and the Documentation Department of National Center for Cultural Heritage of Mongolia, or NCCH. Since 2012, Ms. Sarah Aslan is working as an ICH expert and at the NCCH. Please welcome Ms. Aslan.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good morning, everybody. So now from the ocean people, we'll move into the lockland to step. So very good morning. First of all, let me extend my gratitude to organizers, to Korean Heritage Services, the National Center of Intangible Cultural Heritage, and of course our friend ICHCAP for organizing this event in a very timely issue. Thank you very much. So, as the ocean people, the Mongolian, the steppe people also not good enough in technology. Okay, so Mongolia is a landlocked country which lies between Russia and China. So with the population of 3.5 million people and a very vast territory, 1.5 square kilometers. So as you see at the slide, we have a 67.1% of population settled in an urban area and 1.8 million people settled in capital city. We have 21 provinces and 3 cities. And Mongolia is a home of the 24 ethnic groups. Okay, as everywhere we have internal and external migration. So it's in terms of the internal migration, we have a seasonal pastoral migration. As Mr. Fenjin recently mentioned it, it's another story. We are Mongolians, we are nomads, we're always in the move. We're seeking for the good pastoral grassland for our livestock. That's the concern to be our ICH element and our practices. Our living way. But another term of this, we have a job seeking and for the good job opportunity, education and health, we have both external and internal. But the topic of today is the big migration. As we call it in Mongolia, it's ikhnudul, which is caused and drives by the natural disasters, as we called in Mongolia, the Zod. Okay, what is Zod? Ooh, again. How to? Oof. So I'm really bad on it. Have to get it back. The phenomenon in Mongolia as we recognized with a specific word. Can you help me? Thank you. Oh, sorry. I'm a bit nervous, so that's why. Okay, here we go. Okay, the phenomenon that Mongolians recognize with a specific word is a determination of winter weather condition leading with the mass death of the livestock from lack of food or water. It's very characterized by harsh cold and too much snow or not enough snow, ice and other factors. So we have 5 different types of zod. The most serious one is the Taran zod, which we called white snow or white death. Just feel that you're in a zod situation in Mongolia. Once you in the morning, once you wake up, you feel the whole your house under the snow and your livestock. That's the Taran zod. And another one is a hard zod, which calls it the black zod. It's mostly causes mostly in a Gobi deserts. The type does not occur everywhere and does not affect large area. Another zod is the iron, which is with a lot of ices. And cold, it's over the harsh, severe winter. and the combined one is called 합설어간. It's two or more type of zods combined. Okay, then zod are complex of phenomenon, and it's a hard and pinpoint exactly what causes them. Zod are caused by the multiple factors, some climate-related and others human-made. Drought is a major culprit. Overgrazing is another one. One factor is global warming, greenhouse gas emission, and the other one is the local anthropogenic activity, such like livestock number, increased livestock number, and the mining activities, and cutting forests. These combine together to create about 50-50. So we have here's some statistics. Initially the zod was had a frequency of 20 or 15 years, but recently it's getting more frequent. As you see it in the slide, at the beginning of the 2000 was a really harsh zod. It was a white zod, and we lost almost 11 million livestock and to 22,000 herdsman families. Herdsman families lost everything. And the next one is occurred at 2009 and 2010. Also we lost around 10 million and 24,000 families lost everything. So as you see at the last point, we had enrolled in 2 years row recently the zod. The first zod was 2022 from 2022 to 2023 winter. There was that zod was covered the 70% of the Mongolia, and it was a combined zod. But last year we had a white zod. So that zod was enrolled in the 2 years row, so the herders and the government has no time to recover from that. So as Mongolian Information and Research Institute of the Meteorology, Hydrology and Environment estimates that a nationwide zod will occur every 4 to 5 years instead of every 10 or 20 years. That's drives the wave to rural area, the migration from the rural to urban area. The natural disaster can have a severe impact on Mongolian herd-independent population, because with around 35% of the labor force relying on the herding for income, and the 63% of rural households assessed in livestock. A nationwide zod affecting the majority of Mongolian herders will strike every 4 to 5 years in the future. Not all zods will be severe, but all of them lead losses. The scale of the migration is extraordinary because the zod drives about 20% of this migration, internal migration to from rural areas to urban area, which is doubling the population of the capital city or some cities, 2 small cities. So the herding is a way of life over a third of Mongolians, and and of symbolic importance to the whole country. Thanks in the part of that's a migration from rural to urban areas, threatening these practices. So as you see the population density map here, so due to this big wave to the urban area, the density of Ulaanbaatar is increased in 46%, and the other cities are around 20%. The most of the wave comes from the western area. And at the western area, the most of the ethnic groups settled. So at the next slide, you can see how the urban population increased the year by year. So hundreds of thousands of nomadic people from across this vast country have migrated to Ulaanbaatar over the past 3 decades. One partial explanation lies in the environment. Zod phenomenon has made life harder for herders on the Mongolian steppe. So at the slide, we can see that the registration of the ICH practitioners, which are registering, updating every year. So by 2024, as you see at the first row, the ICH practitioners registered in the Ulaanbaatar city is the most. That tells us something. But it's not including the herding practices, traditional knowledge related to the traditional practices of the herding livestock. And also the ICH elements also shows the highest number in Ulaanbaatar city. So which means that most of them practices moving to the urban city. So last 2 years, with the support of our IRCI Category 2 centers, National Center for Cultural Heritage conducted the assessment, the impact of the natural hazards on intangible culture heritage. So we assessed the eastern part of Mongolia, which is the region of low rate of the migration rural to urban. So what was the finding? Finding was that in one hand, the herders can forecast and well prepared using the traditional knowledge and survive the drought with the limited minimal damages. And they're adaptive on it. But in other hand, the frequency of the drought does not give the time for proper recovery, which leads to massive loss and drives the wave of the big migration. As the eastern region is more settled and with the minimum numbers of rural to urban migration, but the findings oversee the wave started even in this area. The wave of big migration can be or might have impact on loss or disappearance of some of the traditional knowledge practice associated with the traditional way of living of the nomads. Also, there are needs of proper management plan and policy development. Thanks to the IRCI project, we found our gap in the ICH safeguarding policy because we did not have disaster risk management regarding to the ICH. Also at the national-wide, the National Climate Change Strategy and the National Disaster Risk Management have also gap on it. There is no notion or nothing about the integration of the ICH and ICH or traditional knowledge at all at these strategies. So we should involve or integrate all these things to this policy. So if nature keeps changing, if the climate keeps changing, we can we can't say it won't happen. If natural disasters keep on happening, people won't have any choice but to move. Therefore, we shall foresee need and well prepared. We should advocate and develop the friendly legal environment and life environment for the safeguarding in terms of ICH and in terms of the ICH risk reduction and climate change plans and strategy. Whew, that's all from my side. Thank you very much. I'll try to keep my time.
예, 네 번째 발표를 같이 들었습니다.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aslan. I just found the ZOD phenomenon is quite severe. I just wondered what ZOD is, and it is a kind of a severe winter weather condition. And recently, the frequency actually gets shortened, and the ZOD actually led a big migration of Mongolian nomad people from rural areas to urban areas. So we need to pay attention to how the Mongolian, the herding-related traditional knowledge can be safeguarded. Thank you very much. And now we'd like to have a panel discussion with 4 speakers and 2 panel discussants.
예, 아까 네 분의 발표자 선생님들께서는 제가
Yes,
서두에 소개를
and I have already introduced our speakers when they gave their presentations or before they gave their presentations, and I would now like to introduce you to our panelists. We have Yoko Nujima, Head of Research Section at the International Research Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage in the Asia Pacific region, IRCI. Yoko Nojima, as mentioned, is the head of research section, and she received her PhD in anthropology from the University of Hawaii at Manoa in 2008 with a study of food technologies and pottery in Vanuatu. It's a great pleasure to have you. And we have our next panelist, who is the chairperson of Korea Museum Education Association and president of the Korea Museum Education he's the president of the Korea Museum Education Association and holds a master's degree in cultural anthropology with a specialty in religious folklore from Hanyang University. And from 1992 to 2023, he worked at the National Folk Museum of Korea under the Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism. So, yes, we do have 2 panelists and 4 speakers. And we've heard the presentations. So we've heard about natural catastrophes, a relocation of the capital city, and sea level rise, and the bitter cold. And you can see that none of these situations are indeed an easy challenge. And we have been seeing cases of where the people were forced to migrate due to all of these challenges. And I can see that the organizers have really brought together many interesting topics, but it's very difficult to actually discuss or focus our discussions. And I know that we are behind schedule right now. We don't have a lot of time, so I think that we'll have to conduct this panel discussion in a succinct fashion. So, to our panelists, you may have some comments or questions for our speakers, or there could be anything that you would like to add. So, I would like to give the floor to our panelists. So, first, I would like to invite Ms. Yoko Nujima.
Thank you very much for your introduction, and good morning, everyone. And I have been learning a lot since yesterday, because migration itself is not my specialty, but I'm always interested in, because as an ICH researcher. So I'd like to start from a kind of my general impression or reflection that what I learned about the ICH and migration in general. Because intangible cultural heritage is deeply rooted in the environment and the landscape. So specificity of practices have been developed over generations and sometimes over centuries as an outcome of people's interaction with their living environment. So acknowledging that ICH is closely linked with specific places, migration and displacement both entail the disconnection of ICH bearers from associated places and environment. So this, I think, is very challenging because some ICH practice may not hold the same significance, and the migrant communities need to re-establish their identity in a new environment, including different social settings. So in this process, certain cultural practices, including those that used to be a part of daily lives, may get highlighted as their heritage. So in this sense, migration is an opportunity for ICH, where migrants rediscover or actively create heritage to situate their existence in a new context. And we have learned many cases yesterday of intangible heritage that have been emerged and evolved among migrant communities. So cases presented in this session today about much recent or ongoing situations of migration or displacement or relocations triggered by different reasons. So natural disasters, climate change, and new capital relocation that have been very interesting to listening to that. So having this general observation, I have a specific question to each presenters. Ryusuke Kodani's presentation exemplifies the significance of festive events and the performance in maintaining communities that were damaged and relocated after disaster. And the Tiger Dance was a means of linking the relocated communities with their homeland. So firstly, I would like to clarify whether the people who joined the performance group were originally from the Namita region at some point, but then they left the village for some time and they came back to join, or there are some people who are entirely new to the community. And then having said that, if the latter is the case, I wonder if they have any attachment to Nami-Ita as their homeland or their place. So this is a question to him. And Harry Jogaswara talked about the planning of capital towns with artificial environmental design, and I think there are multiple layers of migration issues. One is the influx of population from all over the country into the new capital, probably for economic reasons and for working for the government and so on. But the other is the local communities who used to be there and using the environment before the area was developed as the capital. So my question is mostly on the latter. So how all these local indigenous communities have been sufficiently supported for the establishment of their livelihood and the ICH? So you mentioned about some national guidelines or grand designs and the living museums programs, but how much communities are kind of engaged in this process, and if it leads to the empowerment of the local communities? And in the Pacific, Mary presented several cases of migration associated with climate change, where there are some people who choose to stay despite the rising sea level threatening the small islands. So given that Pacific culture and ICH is closely connected with the island environment, so my question to Mary is about the Tuvalu migrants to New Zealand. So you have introduced us a little bit about what you have been doing. The program is still in progress, but I'm very much interested in knowing how all these migrant people are trying to establish their Tuvalu identity when they are disconnected from their islands. So if there is any specific ICH elements or domains of ICH highlighted in this program, that would be very interested in learning about that. So Saku Arsalan's case was the migration caused by Zod, a disaster whose effect has been intensified due to climate change. So this situation is suggesting the difficulty for the communities concerned to continue their pastoral lifestyle if they continue to lose livestock over and over again. So this is, I think, this very challenging situation. So I assume these pastoral communities used to have certain mechanisms to mitigate the impact of Zod, as it has been a part of their subsistence knowledge. So I wonder if such mechanism is still in place, or the situation intensified by climate change is beyond the capacity of traditional knowledge and mechanism. And even some innovative solution incorporating modern technology might be necessary. So I'm wondering if there is any measures that are considered to be implemented for reducing the impact of sustaining herding culture and the livelihood as ICH. And I have another question. After listening to your presentation, you said the significant numbers of ICH associated with herders are actually found in Ulaanbaatar, in the capital area. So how are they sustaining their ICH when they are disconnected from their original nomadic land? So these are all my questions.
답변을 한꺼번에 드리는 게 나을 것 같아요.
Yes, I think that it may be better to collect all of the questions and then seek the responses from the speakers. So I would like to ask our speakers to respond all together afterwards. So our next panelist, please.
이관호입니다. 사실 여러분들
I am Lee Gan-ho, chairperson of Korean Museum Education Association. Actually, I'm here on behalf of my colleague, who's supposed to be here as a panel discussant. So after listening to 4 presentations, I just found them very informative and intriguing. And working as a chairperson of the Korean Museum Education Association, I actually have paid attention and interest in various subjects, including in some of the topics that are mentioned in 4 presentations. And also, I'd like to talk about 2 keywords here: natural disaster and capital relocation.
특히 이제 첫 번째 발표를 해주신
The first presentation was by Mr. Yusuke Kodani, and it actually befits my major, my area of expertise. We do have the lion dance and the mask dance, the Gangil mask dance of Korea, and we do have some similarities when it comes to the natural disasters and the ICH. But in order to save time, I would like to go right into my question. So our first speaker in his presentation has indicated the route of transmission, but it was mostly on who is the main protagonist of transmission. So I would like to understand, with the change of the practitioners, can you maybe give us some more information on the changes? Is there any research on that? That would be great.
And as for the Harry Yoga Suarez presentation, actually Korea has gone through a similar experience, which is the relocation of the administrative cities. So at my organization, the National Folk Museum of Korea, we conducted a similar survey or research with regard to the relocation of the capital city. So I'm just wondering whether Indonesia conducted a preliminary survey or research with regard to the potential impact of the relocation of the capital.
And to our third speaker, I know that we don't have a lot of time, so let me give a common question for our third and fourth speaker. So we've talked about natural catastrophes, and both in Mongolia and amongst the Pacific states. So my question for you would be the following for our third and fourth speaker. According to Eric Hobbs, which has to do with made traditions, they do say that ICH continues on to evolve, it continues to be created, and it evolves. So when it comes to Zod and natural challenges,
So just mentioned big migration from rural areas to Ulaanbaatar or the city area.
In the case of our third speaker, with climate change, we have the home country and the host country. So I'd like to understand what were the migration strategies like going forward. So could you maybe give us some more information of how the migration took place? Yes, so I think that we can go in the order of the presentations, starting from our first speaker.
はい、最初に野島さんの方の質問で、新しく来た人たちが、どういうふうに加わっているのかということ、それから波板と全く関係ない人がどれぐらい入っているのかということだったのですけども、波板トラマイに関して言うと、例えば東京とかそちらに住んでる人が、やるたびに気仙沼の方に戻ってくる、出身者が戻ってくるという形のが、比較的多いです。で今日事例として、気仙沼の波板のトラマイを紹介しましたけども、東日本大震災の後同じような被害を受けたところは非常にたくさんコミュニティがありますけども、別のコミュニティではかなり積極的に、例えば見学に来てる学生であったりとか、そういうスカウトをして、メンバーに入れてその踊り手であったり囃子手のメンバーを増やすという例はいくつか聞いていますので、こういう動きというのは東日本大震災の後の日本では、それなりに広く見られるものだったかなというように思います。それからリーさんの、ご質問にあった、進め方の変化というところですけども、波板トラマイはそのお嫁に来た外の地域からお嫁に来た女性たちがかなり積極的というのは東日本の前からもそうなんですけども、東日本の後、さらに積極的に女性が前面に出てくるようになった、その出身ではない女性が出てくるようになったというのが一つの特徴かなと思います。顕著な変化はなかったということですね。
예, 그 두 분이 질문을 해주셨는데 그 첫
Yes,
번째에
I
대한
received
답을
two questions.
말씀드리면
If I may respond to the very first question.
도쿄 근교에 수도권으로 이사했던 그
In the case
나미타 출신들이
of
귀향해서
those
온
that
분들이 가장 많았습니다.
lived in Namiyata,
그리고
they've
특히
had
이제
to move out to the suburban
거의
regions of
비슷한
Tokyo, and
지역에
then
피해를
they came back.
입었던
And most
분들은
of those that did
그
practice
지역에
this
도움을
art
주러
were
왔던 그
those
젊은이들을
that came
공동체를
back.
이렇게
But we
들어
also had the youth
들어올
that
수 있게 이렇게
took
했던
part in the
곳이
community
많다면
in order to provide
나미타 같은
support.
경우는 그
So
출신 지역
they were
고향이었던
also
사람들이
involved and they were
많아서
allowed to
본 게 좀
practice, but
다르다고 할 수
you can see
있겠습니다.
that
두
in most of the
번째
cases they were those that were
말씀해 주신
displaced but
그거
then
이제
have moved out,
다뤄드리면
migrated, but then came
결혼해
back
온
into
이주 여성들이 많았고
Namita,
특히
and there were many
지진 이후에는
marriage migrants.
여성들이 그
And
호랑이
after the
춤의
earthquake,
주심력인 멤버가
the
됐다고
women
합니다.
have been
그래서
the
그
major
전승
proponents
주체의
of the
변화에
tiger dance
따른
after the
큰
earthquake.
변화는
So
느끼지는
there wasn't a
볼
major
수는
change
없었고
that was
그 주체가
identified with the
여성들의
change of
역할이 많이
those that led the process.
강조됐다
But
이런
one thing
측면을
is that
말씀드릴 수
there was a
있겠습니다.
greater role played by the women in this tiger dance performing art.
New capital city. One reason the central government choose the East Kalimantan because of they are more open, yeah, because of the experience with the migrant through transmigration and other spontaneous migration and etc. This way, the what so-called local community is more accepted in this sense. Yeah. However, if we talk about the local community related with the indigenous community, I think there are some problem. First, related with the we call the ancestral domain, yeah, or hak ulayat in our language, communal land, something like that. There's still debate about that existence, yeah. But for all, I think the government since very beginning involve the local community. I think I answered the second question. Yeah, I know because this project I think designed like 10 years ago. So many candidates of the place. I think the preparation is quite better. Actually, I was part of the member of the preparation of the IKN, and then while we choose that area. One indicator is about the acceptance, the people acceptance to migrants, something like that. Yeah, this way, the most important indicator is the acceptance of the community level and how they engage. Actually, they engage in very beginning because when preparation of the project, the government already involved the local leaders and also local leader from the both, from the migrants group and also for the indigenous group to have like focus group discussion, community meeting and also try to explain about this project. But still, there are problems related with ownership and etc. But in regard with the intangible culture heritage, I think the interesting one is what's so-called the hybrid culture. Yeah, I think the ICH, we will have the more and more ICH. Why? Because the meeting between the migrant culture and also with the indigenous culture. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. And for Ms. Yoko, you asked for some what examples for the transmission. So one of the things that the Tuvalu community are doing, having an annual calendar of events that promote the Tuvalu Heritage Week. So that's from the 25th of September to the 1st of October. So annually they have the Heritage Week and an arts festival in New Zealand, and they're also taking part in the Pacific Festival of Arts, which is every 4 years. So they promote and try and join the Tuvalu delegation. And in New Zealand, what they're doing is the elders, from the elders to the youth, they're transmitting the knowledge and the skills. Nowadays, there's a lot of NCDs because of the lifestyle changes, you know. So to get back and benchmark against the Maori herbs and language and healing herbs, so medicines, so that they can do a comparison with what they have in Tuvalu and what they have in New Zealand. So really the transmission of that knowledge, recognizing, as we've seen here at the last night, the traditional, the living human treasures, those elders in the community that have the knowledge or the skills of any art form or language or practice, and making sure that it's transmitted down to the youth, the women, the men, and also the primary school level. So that would be some of the ways that they're doing that. And the other one with the migration, I mentioned that they have almost like a lottery. 150 people go over to New Zealand a year. And so that's one way for migration, that they're going over if they want to go over, if they choose to go to live in New Zealand. I mean, it's a hard decision. You go from paradise, you know, with the sea around you, but then you're going to be underwater. I mean, there was a feeling some years ago, even 2003 at UNESCO, we were in a meeting, we're saying, by the time we get World Heritage Sites listed, they'll all be underwater heritage sites. So, you know, it's a dilemma, and the New Zealand government has been kind enough to host, but it's really the choice of the Tuvaluan people and whether they want to go. And some have gone changing their whatever knowledge and skills that they had from their home country to another country, and it's a total life-changing experience. So, yeah, thank you. That's the two questions.
Okay, we'll start from the second question from Miyako. How we sustain the migration way we ICH practitioners, which is migrated to UB. So we have a program, in a capital city program, ICH program. So we're, in terms of this program, each district should have their own spaces for the ICH practitioners and ICH elements, which means Ulaanbaatar has 9 districts. The most migrants from rural area resist at the Songkhinarhan and Bainzruk district. So those districts are maintaining these ICH elements. Besides that, our center have a theater workshop halls free for them to use. So that's, in that way, we trying to keep these ICH element and sustain it, and we organizing various of the events for them. And one just example, as I said, that most of the migrants from rural to urban areas from the western sides were the homeland of the Bibilge dance, which is in the list of the urgent safeguarding list. So a lot of Bibilge dancers migrated to Ulaanbaatar city. So now it's really spread it up in UB city and the central province. So we are almost ready to transfer it from the urgently safeguarding to representative. That's the benefit from side of this migration. The second question, I just want to squeeze the questions from both of you. As I mentioned in my presentation, we have a gap on that mechanism. We just realized it. So to be frankly, there is nothing. So after this last Zod, the government provided the program, which is to give the herders the loan livestock to keep them at the rural area. That's the first step forward, to keep them in the area. And another one was the government developed a new program also. It's the program New Rural Revival, which is also included some sort of trying to solve these problems, some sort of programs. Thank you.
네, 발표가 답변 충분히 됐을 거라고
Yes,
생각합니다.
thank you very much. I believe that the speakers have well responded to the questions, and we're very much behind schedule.
시간이 정말 많이 지났으니까
And
꼭 질문하고 싶은
I would have to just receive maybe one burning question from the floor, if any. Please raise your hand if you do have a burning question.
네, 우리 발표자 토론자 선생님께서
Yes, our speakers and panelists, I believe, has covered much ground. And I think we won't have to receive any additional questions from the floor because we do have another session to come, the special session. So I apologize for not being able to spare some more time for the panel discussion. So I think that it's now time to close session 3 in the panel discussion. Speakers, panelists, thank you very much. And also to the members of the audience, thank you very much for your attention.
네, 고맙습니다.
Thank you very much.
김삼기 위원장님 애쓰셨습니다.
Yes, thank you very much once again, moderator. And my thanks go to our speakers and panelists. It was about sharing the current status of ICH, and for the safeguarding and transmission, we've talked about what we can do. We've heard about what happens in the Pacific States and in other parts of the world. And now we would like to take a 15-minute break and then move on to the next session.
Let's take a break. Let's have a coffee break time. 네, 잠시 후에 뵙겠습니다.
We'll see you back in 15 minutes.
잘 쉬고 오셨습니까? 커피 브레이크
Hope we enjoyed a coffee break.
들어오시니까 커피 향이 막 나는 거 있죠.
I just can smell coffee as the members of the audience come into the forum room. Now let us get started with the special session of 2024 World Forum for the ICH on the theme of migration, broadening the horizon of the ICH. We began the second day of the forum with with a special lecture of Ms. Marie McAleef on the theme of an elevated agenda for migration, and the pact for the future. While the preceding sessions were focused on the history of migration around the world and the achievements of the ICH, this session is structured to specifically focus on migration and the protection of ICH within Korea. Let me invite Lee Hwan-ho, chairperson of Korea Museum Education Association. Mr. Lee Kwan-ho is the vice president of World Museum Education Association, and he has served as the member of the Chungnam Education Committee. Please welcome Chair Lee Kwan-ho with a big round of applause. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Since I introduced myself in the previous session, session number 3, so I will skip the introduction of myself. And we have 5 presenters or speakers for the final session. And as you know, we are lagging behind, so I will proceed and moderate with the special session in a succinct way. And let me declare the beginning of the special session on the theme of achievements and the challenges of migration research and the process in Korea. So as it was rightly mentioned by our the MC, this special session is structured to specifically focus on migration and the protection of the ICH within Korea. In the preceding sessions, we just talked about the history of migration around the world and the achievements of ICH, and the migration has been a heated topic here in Korea as well. So we'd like to share a highlight to the issue of migration as well as protection of the ICH in the midst of increasing migration within the context of Korea.
Our first speaker is Officer Kim Myung-hyun from National Intangible Heritage Center. The topic of its presentation is Remigration of Central Asian Korean to Republic of Korea and the task of transmitting Korean intangible heritage. I'd like to kindly ask you to limit your presentation to 5 to 7 minutes. A big round of applause, please. Yes, it's a great pleasure to meet you all. I am Kim Myung-hyun from National Intangible Heritage Center. Let me go right into my presentation. Today's presentation will cover the cultural background of Korean migrants living in Primorsky Krai, and I would like to discuss the phenomenon of how Korean cultural heritage is transformed and transmitted in Korea and how it is perpetuated in the process of resettlement. In addition, I will also reflect on the past 10 years of education at the NIHC, at the National Intangible Heritage Center, and how ICH education should be conducted for the Korean at home and abroad in the future. The Korean people, now called Korean, who lived in the Hamgyong province in the north of the Korean peninsula, began their continuous migration to the Vladivostok territory or the Primorsky Krai after 1863 to escape natural disasters, famine, and bureaucratic repression. After settling in the new land, they were dispersed to the CIS countries of Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan in 1937 due to Stalin's forced migration policy. After the migration, Korean tried to maintain their Korean identity while adopting Russian culture and lifestyle. As part of this, they organized small art troops in each village. And if you go to Kazakhstan, you will be able to see the National Korea Theater. And the predecessor of the Korea Theater is actually the Wondong Byeongang Chosan Theater. So they established this theater as mentioned and founded the Korea Ilbo to keep their Korean language alive. However, as the years passed, and generations changed, the Korean language was increasingly forgotten. It's been about 160 years since their migration, and their descendants are now fifth or sixth generation. And it's true that the language has been forgotten, and the language barrier became another hindrance in understanding Korean culture, identity, and heritage, and to appreciating its values and meanings in the as a result, Korean culture and heritage have been understood in a distorted way, and altered forms of cultural heritage influenced by ethnic Koreans from China and North Korean influences have been called Korean tradition and culture. Therefore, even now, the band dance or the Changgu dance and the Hansam dance, which are rarely performed in Korea and have no value as intangible heritage, are considered the best cultural heritage of Korea by the community, and are performed on Lunar New Year and Chuseok holidays. So these are some elements and performances that would be put up in these holiday season. In addition, Samulori is called Korea's traditional 농악 by the Korean community, and some performers have borrowed Korean national intangible heritage such as, let's say, 승전무 and 진주 건무 into a different type of sword dance, and they call this Korean traditional dance. And as a result of the amendment of the Act on the Immigration and Legal Status of Overseas Koreans, the Korean community were able to migrate back to Korea, and in the Korean villages, we do see these forms of art being practiced. But you can see that rather than them learning and mastering the cultural heritage of Korea, what they are doing is maintaining this transformed version of the cultural heritage that was practiced in the CIS countries, even still now, after remigration to Korea. So as mentioned, they've been living within a mixed culture of more than 160 years. And a new era for the Korean who have been living in this mixed culture in the CIS countries have now been witnessing, well, a different type of era, and that started off with the intensified popularity of K-pop. And the appropriation of cultural heritage has intensified, and as K-pop has become more popular around the world, and the spread of the Korean wave, which is aimed at young people, has become more about visuals and excitement than the value and meaning of cultural heritage. And on the other hand, the problem in the process of teaching and transmitting cultural heritage is that people are learning through similar or unverified videos of ICH through media or YouTube. So basically, we are witnessing a vicious cycle of teaching and learning through fragmented media outlets. And this is continuing on with people imitating movements or gestures they don't understand, interpret the expressions differently, not understanding the true meaning behind the ICH. And as a result, the spirit and meaning of Korea's ICH has been transmitted in a different fashion, in a different form. And this outcome seems to stem from, among other things, a lack of understanding of the unique Korean language that allows us to understand Korean culture. For example, when performing Korean music or dance, not only the melody of the music, but also the lyrics of the folk songs and the meaning of the gestures and movements in Korean dance, in these cases, are not understood, and the sounds and movements of an ICH is not understood, which makes it very difficult to reveal the true artistic value it has as an ICH. So these gestures and movements, without the right understanding, leads to a different set of, let's say, elements or values, slightly different from the traditional ones.
드러내지 못하고 있는 것을 이렇게 볼 수가 있습니다.
So we believe that this is a challenge. Therefore, if the Korean are to resolve these concerns about their Korean identity and become
독립을 하려고 한다고 한다면
independent from the influence of the CIS cultures, it is necessary for them to study and research the enduring Korean intangible heritage. And in this sense, the ICH education program for Koreans currently operated by NIHC can be very useful, and in the fact that it transmits the historical significance of Korea's ICH to the Korean and shares its value, I believe that it does have its significance. NIHC recommends that Koreans learn to understand and study Korean first, as there are limitations to understanding the Korean culture through Russian. And as mentioned earlier, the meaning and value of ICH may be lost, so that's why there's an emphasis put on learning the Korean language. Article 3 of the Basic Act on National Heritage of the Republic of Korea defines national heritage as cultural, natural, and intangible heritage that is man-made or naturally formed, national, ethnic, or global in nature, and has great historical, artistic, academic, or scenic value. Therefore, it can be said that the importance of Korea's national intangible heritage should be reflected in its education and transmission to cultivate this historical, artistic, academic, and scenic value through skills and practices. And if there is anything to look back upon or redress or change when it comes to ICH education for Korean or overseas Koreans, I believe that it's about finding a way to correct the mistake of focusing on an apprenticeship type of education that emphasizes only on the functional aspects in teaching intangible heritage to the people of Korean ancestry. And as a result, the Korean were not able to recognize whether they were educated in ICH or simply learned some traditional Korean instruments and dances. Therefore, I believe that it's important to host various seminars on the theme of Korean tradition and Korea's intangible cultural heritage and help Koreans understand and talk about the need to pass or transmit intangible heritage to the next generation and to make sure that they understand the need for a community to really transmit this value. And in addition, while ICH education has been focused on Korean living abroad, it is necessary to provide education opportunities for also the Korean community living in Korea as well, so that they can interact with each other, share the results of ICH education, and also create performances together. So it's about making sure that we do have that dual track. On the other hand, it is also important to motivate the Korean community to transmit ICH. Educating leaders through ICH education and taking advantage of the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism's policy on overseas intangible cultural heritage honorary transmitter could be one example. It is important to encourage the Korean community to continue their education by giving them the same qualification as the Korean ICH practitioners. And what's also most important to recognize is that intangible cultural heritage of Korea is not the domain of a specialist, but the living culture of those who lived and who live in Korea, and enjoying its value and meaning, I think is something that would be necessary. And I truly hope that the Korean community can also get on board this journey that emphasizes Korean identity. Yes, thank you very much. So Mr. Kim has talked about the ethnic Koreans in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan, the CIS countries. I've visited these countries a couple of times. They were forcefully deported to these countries. And I do recall that we do have these ethnic Koreans migrating back to Korea for employment. employment. And in terms of transmission of ICH, he's mentioned some of the areas that we need to focus on. We don't have a lot of time, so I would like to kindly ask our speakers to find a way to maybe shorten their presentations.
Let me invite our second speaker. The title of the second presentation is A Model of Coexistence and Mutual Growth, Public Education Support for the Children of Afghan Special Contributors. 서진규 Education Cooperation Officer from Ulsan Metropolitan Office of Education will deliver the presentation. Please welcome him. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Seo Jin-gyo, Education Cooperation Officer at Ulsan Metropolitan Office of Education, or UMOE. Today, I'd like to talk about how the UMOE worked with Korean parents with regard to the entry of African special contributors' children into the Korean public education system. It's a great pleasure for me to take part in this great forum where a lot of insights can be exchanged and discussed with regard to the migration. After the U.S. troops withdrew from Afghanistan and the Taliban retook the country, the Korean government evacuated 391 Afghans from 79 households who had worked at the Korean embassy and Korean government-related agencies. The evacuees who had helped the Korean government's activities in Afghanistan were designated as special contributors. And when they were actually settled in the temporary accommodations, the general Korean public sentiment toward them was quite favorable. And actually, many of them came to Ulsan. Actually, 157 of them from 29 households resettled in Ulsan in 2022. And the UMOE just learned that the Afghan children will enter the public school in Ulsan a few weeks before their actual entry into the public education system. And there was a very insufficient infrastructural kind of preparation on the side of the UMOE to accommodate Afghan children in the Ulsan public education system. And also, there was a huge resistance among the parents of school children in Ulsan because they didn't have much or sufficient information about Afghan children. And having been exposed to misinformation on the internet, claiming the Afghan special contributors had been associated with the Taliban or terrorism, the Korean parents expressed concerns that the conflicts may arise in the classroom between the Korean and Afghan students due to language and cultural differences. However, the UMOE just came up or stick up to the principle that Afghan students should be provided with equal education opportunities as of the Korean students. And also, UMOE came up with a task force team and measures to support Afghan students and alleviate the resistance of the Korean school children's parents. The education superintendent, Imoki, participated in an explanatory session with the Korean school parents to alleviate their concerns. And also, the special force team was operated to support the Afghan children's entry into public education system and their adaptation to school life. The UMOE expedited the process necessary for the school admission of the Afghan children by conducting academic ability tests, offering legal vaccinations, holding school information sessions for the Afghan parents. And for seamless management, the UMOE assigned a total of 90 personnel, including 20 homeroom teachers, 24 Korean language instructors, and administrative support staff to 17 schools operating special classes for Afghan children. Above all, the UMOE reinforced multicultural education to enhance understanding of Afghan students. It conducted education education on Islamic culture for its employees, support the staff of assigned schools, and the teachers and administrative staff of kindergartens, elementary schools, and middle and high schools before the students began schooling. It also provided its employees, teachers, and administrative staff of schools, Korean parents, Afghan parents, and homeroom teachers with various forms of multicultural understanding education, and also the gender equality and or other related the training or the explanatory sessions were provided to the various stakeholders. At the beginning of the semester, it arranged the commute bus service and also provided relevant support to Afghan students. And on March 21st, 2022, 43 days after the Afghan children arrived in an unfamiliar city of Ulsan, 85 of them finally began their school life. Thanks to the UMOE's rapid response and preparation, 16 kindergartners, 28 elementary school students, 22 middle school students, and 19 high school students were admitted to the public education system in Korea. And the Afghan students adapted themselves very well to the public education system here in Korea, and they got along very well with their Korean classmates. And their Korean proficiency has improved significantly, and they interpret for their parents. And also, some of them got a job after graduating from high school. And throughout the course of getting the Afghan children admitted to school, the superintendent of the UMOE maintained a basic principle that they must be educated within the public education system under any circumstances. She also emphasized the Afghan students should go to Korean schools to adapt more quickly, and new learning can take place in an unfamiliar environment. The kids' entry into public education system manifests Ulsan's education policy and value around the "No Children Left Behind" slogan. Various media outlets and human rights groups at home and abroad evaluated the UMO's efforts to overcome local opposition, embrace the Afghan children into public education, and offer education without discrimination as an exemplary case to be emulated. And UMOE will spare no efforts in providing refugee kids with continuous interest and support so that they can cherish their cultural and linguistic diversity and grow as healthy members of our society. Two theses and two booklets were published with regard to the details of the acceptance of Afghan children to the public education system. I read the story in the news article, and I didn't know that what UMOE has done to accommodate these Afghan children into the Korean public education system. Please give a big round of applause to Mr. Seo Jin-gyu for he and the UMOE's achievement. Mr. Seo Jin-gyu just mentioned the case of Afghan and the special contributors. 309 Afghans came to the country after being designated as special contributors, and the Korean public education system accommodated the children of those special contributors.
Moving on to the third presentation. So the topic of this presentation is migration and multiculturalism, research, exhibitions, and education at the National Folklore Museum. And I do want to mention that she's a colleague of mine that worked with we worked together, and it's a great pleasure to see her present some of the key projects that I was always very much interested in. And we have Lee Mi. Yes, hello. I am a curator at National Folk Museum of Korea. I'm Lee Mi. Thank you very much for inviting me to this very meaningful forum. The National Folk Museum of Korea is dedicated to collection, research, preservation, exhibition, and education pertaining to traditional, modern, and contemporary folk culture in Korea, with the goal of transmitting folk culture and creating new value for the future. Given the museum's focus on folklore and the history of everyday life in Korea, its activities endeavor to capture societal changes in a manner akin to those of an organism while continuing to conduct research, hold exhibitions, and provide educational programs related to migration and multiculturalism. So then, if we look into some of the research activities, the museum research focus related to migration and multiculturalism can be broadly divided into two main areas: the living cultures of overseas Koreans and multiculturalism in Korea. The first research aimed at understanding the identity of the global Korean community initially took place from 1996 to 2005, beginning with China and then extending to the living culture surveys of overseas Koreans in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Russia, Japan, the US, and Mexico. And a decade later, starting in 2015, the museum conducted in-depth research on Korean in Ussurisk, Russia, Korean residents in Hamburg, Germany, and Korean Chinese in China, which led to the publication of research reports titled Voice of Russian Koreans and Life and Culture of Korean Immigrants in Hamburg, Germany. And it's true that we've moved on to a multicultural society with active migration. And ever since, the museum has been very much focused on activities in multiculturalism. In 2009, there was a forum that was put together on museums and multiculturalism, and there were various surveys that were conducted throughout. And the report that you see here was in 2011. It was a city folk survey that was done for Incheon. And at that time, we had the family of Wang Jo-young and Kim Mira. The life of Wang Jo-young and Kim Mira family was a report that was issued. So it was about visiting a family of the region of that city to go into all of the household items, and this was all put together in a record. So it was about the households to understand the families, the ethnic Chinese. And then in 2013, we had a survey for Lee Subom and Rosalie's family, and this was in the Kochi area. Lee Subom, who worked for a ship building industry, and a Filipino, Rosalie, and it was a survey on this family. And in 2015, the museum conducted a survey on Ansan Multicultural Village Special Zone in Wongguk-dong. And once again, you can see that we've put together this survey on the household items. And in 2022, we've engaged in a nationwide survey. In the first year, it was in Seoul and Gyeonggi area. We covered the mosques of Itaewon, and then in Gyeongsang, the foreigners that live there. And then the second year was Jeolla, Chungcheong, which we have researched. And then as a special edition, we've also put together a book on multicultural food culture. And there are also some special exhibitions at the museum. In 2009, we had an exhibition, a special exhibition that had to do with the cultural diversities in Korea, which is basically about the world within us. And there were many marriage migrants at the time and in their bags. So we wanted to see what kind of items were included. So that was the first starting point, this question. So if you look at this exhibition, it's about the items and the marriage migrants' bag. And there are videos that cover the various life aspects of such multicultural families. And then there was also another exhibition under a special exhibition which was titled My Name's Mapopo and Kim Hanam. And this was in 2012, where marriage migrants took part as curators, and we had their voices also portrayed for this special exhibition. And regarding multicultural education and training, the museum has been actively engaging in this activity utilizing the Cultural Discovery Box project. And the catchphrase for the Cultural Discovery Box is that when you open the box, there's a new world that opens up, and it contains various experiential items that really fosters multicultural sensibility. So it's a fun discovery box for kids. And with this question of what the role of museums in a multicultural society be, and also to make sure that we can better the understanding of children on their multicultural sensitivity, we decided to engage in this project. So it's about, of course, resolving the conflict in the society, enabling social inclusion, inclusion, and also finding a way to utilize the multicultural experiences as a key driving force for the society. And this cultural discovery box started off from 2010. So it's a box that includes the cultures of that individual country. So in 2010, we had Mongolia and the Vietnamese cultural discovery box. And in terms of how we've selected the countries is that were the countries that weren't a familiar country in the past, but there are countries with many marriage migrants, foreign workers, where it would be important to understand that country. So that would be the priority. So we had the Philippines cultural discovery box in 2011. So this is what it looks like. So in the box, it includes the various aspects, the faces of that country, and children can go discover and get acquainted with the culture. In 2012, it was Korea. In 2013, Uzbekistan. In 2014, Indonesia. 2015, China. 2016, Japan. 2017, India. And in 2018, Thailand. So we put together these cultural discovery boxes of these respective countries. And well, it includes food, clothing, shelter supplies, necessities, toys, instruments. It also includes image materials, video, audio materials, materials to learn. And this is a process of how this box is put together. This is the Philippine box. So with the Filipino community in Korea, we have been working closely with them to put together this discovery box. And with this box in the museum, various learning and training would take place. So these are some of the examples. So for the children to access this box and to foster a cultural sensitivity and positive connotation towards these different cultures was the expectation that we had for this box. And we also have this website where anyone can access the information. And some key aspects of the cultural discovery box. This is not just used in our museum, whichever institution it may be. If there are any agencies that want to borrow this box, they can. And here it indicates the schools, museums, multicultural centers nationwide that have utilized this box. We had about 1 million people that have actually experienced the cultural discovery box. And this is how we would send off the box to the institutions that have requested the assistance. And this is how it's used in various parts of the community. And based on the result and outcome of this project, we've also engaged in a interesting exhibition on food at the Children's Museum. So the cultural discovery box is, of course, to understand a specific culture of an individual country. However, what this is about multiculturalism. So it's about the universality and the crossroads of the cultures of it coming together. And through food culture, it's about befriending Asians. So that was the topic of this special exhibition. And in this exhibition, we had marriage migrant community that was involved in introducing our meal, the meal of my mom's country. So we had the children of the migrant workers, and we've actually went to visit their families to take a video. We filmed this video so that they can introduce their meal, and this was portrayed in the exhibition. And they were introduced in the opening ceremony of the exhibition to engage in tape cutting and also engage in various discussions. So this section titled "Introducing the Food of My Mom's Country." This exhibition is one pivotal exhibition. And we can say that it's quite different in the fact that the migrant community are not just those that receive education, but are those that take part as lecturers, as hosts of these projects. They're basically the protagonists. And it's been 14 years since we've launched the Cultural Discovery Box project. And what we want to do is reflect upon the outcome to see what kind of changes and transformations would be necessary. So we're at that critical juncture of assessing our past footsteps. ICOM indicates that the experience of sustainability, inclusivity, and accessibility is really important. It's about museums of institutions of diversity and inclusion according to ICOM, and we do believe that there will be a more greater role that the museums would have to play going forward in this era. Yes, thank you very much for that presentation. I believe that Ms. Imi can probably share with us so much. She probably needs more than 2-3 hours. And if you think about multiculturalism, sometimes it may have a negative connotation in Korea, and that's why we utilized the term cultural diversity. And as a result, cultural diversity is now a key concept that is being used. So migration and cultural diversity is an area that the curator is very much interested in and has been giving us the presentation on the various exhibitions. Thank you very much.
다음 네 번째 발표를
Our
시작하겠습니다.
next speaker
어제 아마 첫날 첫 번째
is
세션에서 좌장으로도 수고해
the one who
주셨거든요.
actually chaired the first session of last year. Last day.
문화유산이라고 하는 주제로 발표해 주실
So
전남대학교
I'd like to
김경하
invite
교수님을
Professor Kim
소개합니다.
Kyung-ha from Jeonnam
부탁드리겠습니다.
National University. He will deliver a presentation on the theme of an overview of migration research in Korea and ICH as a research theme. We are behind the schedule, so I will do my best to make my presentation succinct. I would like to talk about migration research here in Korea and how ICH has been used as a research theme. I believe that the next speaker, Mr. Lee, will provide a kind of overview on the current status of foreign migrants here in Korea. So I'll just skip that part. As it was mentioned by previous speakers, Korea is transforming itself into a multicultural society. So the migration and multicultures have been a kind of the popular themes for academic research. So it seems that the immigration and the cultural diversity is getting its popularity as a research theme. Even though there is increasing numbers of research cases on immigration, however, there are only few which actually takes up the ICH as their the migration-related research cases. So folklore, the traditional arts, or kind of folk songs such as arirang have never been actually have been a kind of popular research theme with regard to migration research conducted here in Korea, focusing on ethnic Koreans living in China or living in Russia. So it seems that there's some room to be improved with regard to the direction of the migration research here in Korea, because the trend of the migration research in Korea has solely focused on transmission of the ICH shared among the ethnic Koreans in China and Russia. And the officer Kim Myung-hyun, our first speaker, provided a very interesting presentation on re-immigration or remigration of Central Asian Korean to the Republic of Korea. So I believe that actually is part of the government agency's job to find out the value and meaning of the ICH shared and transmitted by ethnic Koreans living in overseas countries. But I believe that we also need to shed some highlight how kind of converse form of ICH has been evolved in some ethnic Koreans living in overseas countries, which demonstrates the combination of the original traditional tradition with the settlement society's tradition. Actually, my previous research focused on the Indian diaspora in Fiji, and I paid a visit to Fiji to conduct research on the Indian diaspora in Canada, Australia, and Fiji. And I believe that my research can be related to the research, migration research on Korean ethnic Koreans living in Russia. So it seems that the Korean or ethnic Koreans living in Russia have maintained a certain part of Korean ICH, and actually, those ethnic Koreans living in Russia migrated to Russia at the end of 18th century in the form of forced migration. And also the same goes for the Indian diaspora in Fiji. They were forced migrants who actually moved from India to Fiji, and their language actually, the English and the Hindi and the language are kind of different from the original the language spoken in India, and also their rituals have been transformed from their original forms. And it seems that such kind of transformation is the result of their adaptation and settlement in Fiji. I believe that such kind of transformation of Fiji Indians or Indo-Fijians can be related to the Korean or ethnic Koreans living in Russia in terms of their adaptation to the settlement society. And also, I just came up with a kind of common aspects of the Indo-Fijians actually living in different places in the world. They actually share kind of kava, drinking, and custom, and also their Hindi language is different from the original Hindi language, and some of the original Indians actually criticize the transformation of the Indian tradition and Indo-Fijians, saying that their Hindu is broken Hindu or things like that. But still, it seems that the Indo-Fijians living in Canada or Australia try to join the Indian community in those countries, but actually sometimes they are denied or rejected by the original Indian community because of their Indo-Fijian identity. And the same goes for the Korean or ethnic Koreans living in Russia. They actually went through the time of the Soviet Union, and the Russian is mother tongue to them, particularly the young generation, young Korean generation. But when it comes to the older generation, their mother tongue is Korean, and some of them actually miss the days that they lived in the system of a Soviet Union. So if we take a look at the Korean, the ICH that they transmit and enjoy, which is originated from Korean, I just found out that actually those ICH or the way they practice have been transformed, such as the rites celebrating the first anniversary of a newborn baby is slightly different or somewhat different from the rite which is being practiced here in Korea. And also they spend like 2 hours in talking about how adorable the baby is in that first birthday celebration ceremony, which is quite different from the first birthday celebration ceremony here in Korea. And also Korean, they really enjoy dancing and singing. So dancing and singing just practice in every celebration, in every ceremony. So Korean, actually, if you participate in the wedding ceremony of Korea, you will find how they enjoy dancing and singing. And actually, these Korean or ethnic Koreans living in Russia scattered around the world. So they are not representing kind of the original form of the rituals part of ICH here in Korea in its original form. However, the Korean origin ICH still play a role in confirming their identity and promoting their community cohesion. So while conducting a migration-focused research in the context of ICH, I just found the transformation of original form of ICH in different settlement society quite fascinating. And actually, actually, the same goes for my immigration research on ethnic Koreans living in China. Living in China and Russia, and the Indians actually settled in Fiji, Australia, and Canada. So we need to think about the meanings of ICH, transformed ICH in settlement societies. Thank you very much, Professor Kim Kyung-ha. Kim Kyung-ha majored in anthropology and earned his PhD in anthropology. So he shared a kind of freshing highlight or a kind of perspective to the immigration research conducted here in Korea. He said that we need to actually explore further why actually the migrants have a transformed or a kind of the converse form of ICH, which is quite different from the original form of ICH. Thank you very much, Professor Kim Kyung-ha. And as it was mentioned in Ms. Yoon-mi's presentation, Kim Kyung-ha also conducted a lot of research on the multiculturalism.
네, 지금 시간이 16분 남았네요.
I think we have only 16 minutes remaining, so I think that we are okay with the time. So let us now invite our next speaker. Our next speaker will be talking about social integration for the Republic of Korea, changing into an immigrant society. We have Lee Jae-ho, National Policy Officer at IOM Republic of Korea. As Professor Kim has mentioned, I think that she will be talking about the current status of migration. A big round of applause, please. Yes, it's a great pleasure to join you. I am Jae-ho Lee from IOM Republic of Korea. I'm probably the last speaker for this last session of this very last day. So I know that we're pressed for time, so I would like to just focus on some of the key points. Recently, especially for the Koreans here in the audience, I'm sure that you've heard about the changes of demographics. It's true that we have the lowest total fertility rates. However, the age population is on the rise. And in terms of how to resolve the situation is currently a major task at hand for the Korean society. So, for instance, a couple of years ago, for the first time, Korea has witnessed a population dead cross. The number of total births were less than those that have deceased. And then in December of 2021, 18 areas, so it was 2021 where 89 cities and counties were designated as depopulation regions, and 18 cities and countries or counties were designated as areas of concern. So when it comes to, let's say, fishing, manufacturing, agriculture, there was a major shortage issue that we have faced for a number of years. And as a way to resolve this, immigration or migration has been mentioned as a key alternative. And in Korea, we've been seeing policies being introduced. For instance, the expansion of the quotas and the number of permitted industries for the employment permits, the employment permit system, and the E-74, for instance. There was some expansion of skilled workers point system and the quota. And in order to alleviate population decline as well as promote local economic vitality, we've also been seeing the regularization of regional specialized visa programs. So in many aspects, the Korean society has been trying to attract more migrants. In August of 2024, we have more than 2.6 million foreigners currently living in Korea in various capacities, and they account for 5% of the total population already. And there are many policies actually, as mentioned, currently underway. And with these policies, we will have more migrants living with us. And if we can divide up the policies, it could be on the number of, let's say, people that would be coming in depending on which journey, which channel. And there are also policies that have to do with finding a way to manage their residence. And there are also other policies that have to do with social integration. There are policies on that as well. And I would like to focus more so on social integration in terms of the policies that are in place. So then first, what is social integration? In order to really give you some more information, I've brought together a number of literature, and one would be that when it comes to social integration, it's about minimizing any social conflicts that would take place, and basically it's a process of minimizing conflicts and inequalities in all areas of society and transforming all the people involved into a single entity. The social integration for immigrants means two things. First, the process by which immigrants respect the values of society of the destination state, Korea, and fulfill their responsibilities and obligations as members of that society. And second, the mutual process in which the citizens of the destination state accept the immigrants and respect and embrace the diversity they bring, thereby establishing immigrants as members of society. So when it comes to the ICH that they bring in, and for the destination state, it's about reinvigorating diversity and vitality and having them come together so that the society can grow based on fostering innovation and creativity. And Korea and its framework policy is elaborated by the Ministry of Justice, and we also have the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family that focuses on marriage migrants, and we also have the Ministry of Education that engages in various social integration programs for immigrants. And as what we were able to identify in the papers and literature was that if you think about the social integration policy, it was more so a very much assimilationist type of approach. It was about having them understand culture, be taught of the Korean language, and that was noted as social integration. So most of the policies were more so on assimilation. However, if you think about the values, the value sets, and having them understand that is of course important, but I think that it's more than assimilation. It's not just about training that would be on that, because if that happens, the minority culture or the ICH that would bring in, it's about having that be adapted to the mainstream Korean culture, which of course would not make it easy for the mutual process or the social integration that we aspire to put in place.
So migrants should be able to maintain their identity, including their ICH and traditions. And I believe the development policy should be developed and implemented. And also, the assimilationist policies encourage immigrants to adopt the culture, identity, and values of the destination society rather than promoting the preservation or sharing of their own unique identities. And therefore, assimilationist policies can lead to discrimination, exclusion of immigrants by augmenting the perception that immigrants are the only target of social integration. And we believe that immigrants are the targets for the Korean government policies implementation. However, we also need to understand that while encouraging immigrants or the migrants to adapt themselves to the Korean culture and Korean society, the Korean society and Korean citizens also need to be encouraged to understand the immigrant culture. And Korea came up with a new policy direction with regard to the integration of the immigrants. So in order to boost or increase cultural inclusiveness, Korean government and development agencies came up with a lot of mutual respect-based the measures and the policy mechanisms. It seems that we will have increasing number of migrants coming into the Korea. Therefore, in this context, we need to create a more inclusive society where each other can understand better. Thank you very much. The officer Lee Jae-ho briefed us on the Korean policies focusing on integration of migrants into the Korean society. Back in 2009, I participated in planning an exhibition on multicultural families and households. I hope that my comment would not offend anyone here, but what I found during the days that I spent in preparing the multicultural household-related exhibition,
많은 발전을 거듭해서
I just found that a lot of the foreign migrants have some difficulties in adapting themselves to Korea and the Korean culture. But since then, a lot of progress has been made, and we are living in a time when a married migrant has been elected as a member of the National Assembly. And I believe that Korea is quite good at adapting itself to changes, and actually it is adapting itself to a multicultural era. And given the history of Korea, Korea has been a multicultural society since Goryeo dynasty. So in this context, I believe that the 5 presentations made by 5 speakers are quite insightful and resonating. Please give a big round of applause to 5 speakers.
지금 사실 하실 말씀들이 많으셨을 텐데
It seems that we have 7 minutes left before we wrap up the special session. So I believe that we can entertain a couple of questions from the floor. And if there is any question coming from the floor, I would like to ask a question. Or we can ask speakers to make additional comments that they didn't cover in their presentations. So I would like to ask whether there is any question from the floor. I believe that we have foreign guests joining the final session, the last session of the day. So actually, you may have some questions about the migration or the migrant society here in Korea.
마이크 좀 부탁드리겠습니다.
Please move over the microphone.
간단하게 소개 좀
Please introduce yourself.
I know that there are a number of universities and research organizations. They are undertaking many researches, and I especially know Professor Kim, who has been doing research on diaspora and migration in different countries. I'm just wondering if there is any initiative taken by you making some documentaries or ethnographic film on diaspora in other countries, Korean diaspora or different diasporas in Bangladesh, in Korea. I know that there are many films made by Indians and other countries, especially there are some Indian movies on diaspora identity, say Namesake or My Name is Khan, or even there is a film on Bangladeshi diaspora in London. It's called Brick Lane. So I'm not sure, because this would be another way to portray the life, culture, and livelihood of diaspora communities living in different parts of the world. It can be in Korea on different diasporas in Korea or Korean diaspora in other countries. I'm just wondering if you have any. I know there was a diaspora film festival held in May this year in Incheon, so it was quite good. But I'm just wondering whether is there any initiative taken by anthropologists or in the same area, so that you can intensively undertake more research, not only producing the research report or writing the book, but also making the films and documentaries. Thank you so much.
아마 지금 말씀하신 대로 한국에서는 지금 특정한 이주민 집단을
Here in Korea,
연구를 무형문화
actually,
집단이라든지 뭐 이런
there are only few the research initiatives going on focusing on a specific migrant society, particularly ICH, and movements such as creating documentaries or films. I cannot recall any of such cases. Of course, there are certain documentary films or the movies depicting how the foreign immigrants or the migrants are adapting themselves in Korea or into the Korean society, and they're depicting their experiences while they are adapting themselves to the Korean society. I believe that there are a lot of research bases depicting the foreign immigrants adapting themselves to Korea. For example, a Nepali migrant adapts himself or herself to the Korean
나온
society.
것이죠.
Such kind of theme can be dealt in the Korean film.
이런 여러
And
가지
also there is
영화를
a very
통해서
renowned film,
해외에서
Minari, which is depicting Korean migrant
미국에서
adapting
경험하는 여러 가지
migrants
문화적
and the family,
어떤
the migrant
경험이라든지
family adapting
아니면은
themselves to the U.S. society or the
세대간
American
어떤 차이,
society,
예를 들면 할머니가
and
한국에서
depicting kind of
가가지고
the
미국에서
intergenerational
자라고
difference.
자라나기
So
성장하고
Korean
어떤
grandma
문화적인 차이로 인한 또는 언어적인 어떤 차이로 인한
has some kind
경험하는
of difficulties
그러한
in
것들이 어떤
communicating
것인가, 또
her
미국
grandson
사회에서는
because of
어떻게
the
정리되고 어떤 의미를 갖는가, 이런
intergenerational
것들을
difference.
영화로
And such
만들어주고
kind
그런 것
of
같습니다. 근데
difference
물론
and the
연구도
difficulties
많이
depicted
됐죠.
in the film
미국에 있는
Minari,
한인들에
and
대한
also
연구들은
there are
상당히
many
이런
research cases we
세아들은
can find with regard
한인
to the
문화인이라든지
Korean
이야기들,
migrants
특히
adapting
뭐
themselves
교회를
to
중심으로
the
하는 어떤
American
커뮤니티
society,
형성이라든지 뭐
focusing
이런
on the
그러한
formation of
이야기를 했지만
communities centering
미국으로
around
아시아에
Korean
대한
churches.
이야기는 그렇게
But I believe that there are
본격적으로
not many
연구하는
cases
연구들이 그렇게 많지 않은 걸로 알고 있습니다.
where the research is conducted from the perspective of the ICH.
사실은 우리 국립미술박물관에서
Yes,
일찌감치
at the
재외동사
Folk Museum of Korea, as was mentioned by Ms. Yumi, there was a household survey for the ethnic Koreans from China. And I do recall I was the curator back then when we were conducting the survey. And then in Central Asia, for instance, with Andong University and Seoul National University, there were some surveys that were conducted, and I hope that that answered your question.
지금 한 2분
I
정도
believe that we
남았는데
have about 2 minutes remaining. Maybe we can receive one last question from the floor, if any.
없으신가요? 예. 마이크 좀 저쪽에.
Yes, please pass the mic.
그 간단하게 질문 중심으로 좀
And I would
부탁드리겠습니다.
like to kindly ask you to keep your question brief.
우리가 북유럽 사회에서도 보듯이
So as we can
이주인
see in
세대의
Northern
경우는
Europe, in the case of the
국가에서
migrants' first generation,
정착하기 위해서
what happens
노력들을
is
많이
they
하거든요.
do put in a lot of
그러다
effort to
보니까
settle in the
어떤
destination
발생되는
country.
문제에 대해서
And
스스로들이
there could be
조금 그런
issues or
것들을
challenges that may arise,
정리하면서
but they try to
지내는데
go solve these
문제는 이제
problems one
이주
by one.
2세대로
But then
넘어갈
if we
때
move on to the second
그들의
generation of migrants,
정체성의 어떤 혼란
they
이런 것들이
do
문제가
see
되는
a
것
identity
같습니다.
crisis
아까
in
이제
many
우리의
cases. We've
이주가
talked
상당히
about our
공화주의적이고
migration,
그러다
and
보니까 여러
sometimes it
가지
may be too much focused on
문제가
assimilation,
발생되고
which may lead
그들을
to
포용할
another
수
host of
있는
issues.
그들을 이해할 수
So
있는
to
어떤 이런
understand the
쪽으로
migrant
좀
community,
관심을 가져야
to
된다라고
find a
이제
way to have
말씀을
them
해주셨는데요.
included was
이주
something that was
2세대들을
important, as mentioned by the
위해서
speaker. So for the
우리가
second
준비해야
generation
될 것들이
migrants,
있다면
is there anything
구체적으로
that we should
어떤
prepare in
것들이
advance?
있을지
What can we do for them? I think that maybe we can have this answered by Mr. Lee Jae-ho.
네, 사실 이주 2세대의
In the case
역할이
of the second generation of
사회통합에
migrants,
굉장히
I
중요합니다.
believe that their role is critical in social integration.
부모님들이
Sometimes
어떤
we have, let's say, their
한국
parents.
사회에 대한 것들이라든가 언어적
When it
측면에서
comes to language or
부족할
Korean
때
society, when there are some lackings or
한국에서 조금 더
insufficiencies,
그 문화와 언어에 가까운
we have the second generation more versed with language and culture of Korea that would actually be the bridge that connects their parents with the Korean society.
그렇기 때문에 아까 사실 그 울산 교육청에서 했었던
And
것처럼
as was mentioned by Ulsan Metropolitan Office of Education,
외국에서 온 사람이 아니라
the children, the second generation, are not those like outsiders of the society. They're just another student in your average family in Korea. And to make sure that they're not left behind in education, to make sure that they're not alienated, I think is the most important thing that we should do.
감사합니다.
Yes, thank you very much.
시간이 잘 늘어났는데
I think that maybe we have some more
혹시
time.
우리 그 발표자분께서 꼭 하신 말씀
So,
있으시면
to our speakers, if there's anything that would keep you up tonight, anything that you would like to share before we close? No? I think that I know you would like to share much more. And when it comes to migration, it can take us throughout the night to talk about this because it's a major issue, a challenge.
지금 그 다문화 사회로 진입을 하면서
As we move on to a multicultural society,
질문해 주셨던 말씀처럼
and as was posed by a member of the audience, we have the second and third generation of migrants that would go through challenging situations. And I believe that today's forum hosted by UNESCO ICHCAP really does carry on meaning. And as mentioned, as a person that focuses on ICH and folk studies, I also feel a very strong sense of responsibility.
특히 이제 무형유산이라고 하는 것이 여러분들 잘 아시겠지만
ICH, as you all know,
아이콤 서울총회
in
때에
the Seoul
그
Assembly of
아이콤에서
ICOM in
공식적으로
2004,
무형유산이라고 하는 것이 병역
ICOM
쪽에
has
개념으로 들어오게
officially
되고
indicated
그 이후에
museums as one form of
2004년도에
ICH.
이어서 바로
And from 2004
2005년도에
and then in
저희 국민스포가
2005,
국제적
at the
무형문화유산이라고
Folk
하는
Museum,
국제 학술 잡지를
we've
아이콤의 공식 학술 잡지 두 개 중에
published an
하나로
academic
합니다. 여기
paper, a
우리
journal
앞에 가운데 세 번째에
on
계시는
ICH.
알렉산드라
And we have
커밍스 그
Ms.
당시
Alexander Cummings. Back then,
2005년도부터
it was in
위원장님을 하셨던 걸로
2005
알고
where she
있는데
was the
그
chair.
위원장님이 우리
And
편집을 오래
the
하셨고
chair was
그래서
also the
이런
editor-in-chief for our
무형문화유산들이
journal by the Folk Museum of
저기
Korea.
그 우리 사회에서
And
널리 펴져서
I believe that it's
이
important
다문화
to make
사회까지도
sure that this really
이어지는 그러한
disseminates,
계기가 되기를
connects to
바라면서
the multicultural
오늘
society
아쉽게도
and
특별
families and
세션의 한
communities.
단계 시간이
And I think
마무리되어
that time is up for
세션을
this session, so
마무리하고
I'll have to
합니다.
close this
오늘
special
발표해
session.
주신 다섯
I
분의
would like to
발표자
extend my
그리고
gratitude to all of our five
여기 끝까지
speakers
남아서
and
이
also
자리를
to
지켜주신
the
우리는
audience
참석객 여러
for
관객분
being with us
여러분들에게도
till the
다시
very
한번
end.
감사드리고요.
Thank you very much.
특히 이런 자리를 마련해 주신
And particularly, I would like to extend my gratitude to Korea
그리고
Heritage Service, the National
아태평론가
Intangible
센터
Heritage
여러분들에게
Center,
다시
and
한번
UNESCO
감사드리면서
HCAP
특별
for
세션을
providing this
마무리하도록
wonderful
하겠습니다.
event. And with that, let me
감사합니다.
close the session. Thank you.
네, 정말 모두들 수고 많으셨습니다.
Thank you very much.
학술이 깊고 넓은 사람을 석학이라고 하는데 정말 아시아 태평양
It was such a great opportunity for all of us to get to know and hear from the renowned experts across the Asia Pacific region. And I hope you enjoyed the forum yesterday and today. It's been a great venue for us to learn about various cases in the Asia Pacific region and explore the ways to better safeguard our ICH.
예, 옮길까요? 세계 무형 문화유산 포럼. 자, 이제
So it's time for us to conclude 2024 World Forum for the ICH. Let me invite Director General Kim Ji-sung of HCAP to deliver his closing remark. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
여러분 많이 피곤하시죠?
I think that you may be quite tired by now. You've took part in a full day's forum yesterday, and there was also the ICH celebration, the festivities. I know that most of you probably enjoyed the festival last night, and this morning we've had this forum, a very tight schedule. And thank you very much for being with us till the very end. And let me read off of my script that I have. Over the course of the two-day forum, we explored the theme of ICH and migration, which featured presentations from many speakers and panelists on how ICH travels and changes across borders and generations, and the role it plays in the process as humanity continues to migrate and settle. So it was a total of 26 speakers and panelists that have featured their presentations on this very topic. Through the history of migration, we saw how ICH can serve as a bridge for inclusion and integration in diverse migrant societies, and how the landscape of ICH is changing in the context of various global issues we face today, such as climate change and disaster management. These discussions were an opportunity to explore the adaptability and resilience of ICH as a way to address the challenges facing humanity today. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all the speakers and panelists who participated in the forum, and your expertise and insights have enriched this forum and reminded us of the importance of intangible cultural heritage, or ICH. I hope that the discussions at this forum will lead to further debate and problem solving on the safeguarding and the role of ICH in the future. I would also like to extend my gratitude to the Administrator and Director General of Korea Heritage Service for their active support in making this forum a success, and the Director General and staff of the National Intangible Heritage Center for their excellent venue and technical support. And I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to the MC for her very lively moderation, the interpreters who worked hard to ensure smooth communication, and the photographers who captured the entire event in photos and videos. And of course, to the staff of the UNESCO ICHCAP, who worked tirelessly from the beginning until end throughout the event. Your dedication and hard work made this event a great success. And I hope to see you all again at an even better occasion and wish you all safe travels home. Thank you very much.
네. 사무총장님의 폐회사 시간에 그
Thank you very
순간을
much, Director General Kim
모였어요.
Ji-sung. Since
사진들을
that a lot of
가장 많이
photographers
찍으셨습니다.
actually
그
kept the
순간을
pictures of
기록하고
Director General giving his closing remark.
걸쳐서 포럼을 진행했습니다.
So it's time for us to wrap up our two-day forum under the theme of migration, broadening the horizon of the ICH, and also the forum provided us with the opportunity to broaden the horizon of our knowledge. And also I had a kind of great feeling and impression that I'm so pleased to take part in this great forum. Thank you very much.
자, 나가실 때 리시버 반납해 주는 거 잊지 마십시오.